Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the March 2nd, 2026 meeting of the Board of Police Commissioners for the Halifax Regional Municipality. We'll call the meeting to order and we'll share the land acknowledgement. The Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. May I ask Vice Chair Kent to join me? Is this on? Oh, okay. Well, welcome everybody. We're here to say thank you to somebody very special to us. So today the board's pleased to formally recognize Martin Ward. Come on over here, Marty. Known to many of us as Marty, as he steps back from his role as General Counsel to the Halifax Board of Police Commissioners. Over many years, Marty has been an authoritative and trusted voice in matters of policing law and governance. His depth of knowledge and sound judgment have guided the board through the interpretation of complex legislation, bylaws, privacy obligations, policy development, service reviews, and numerous other functions. His advice consistently brought clarity, balance, and confidence to the board's deliberations. Marty has been instrumental in supporting the board's oversight mandate, assisting each individual member, the board collectively, in fulfilling its responsibilities with diligence, integrity, and care. His counsel strengthened not only the decisions we made, but also the governance processes that underpin effective and accountable policing oversight. Marty, you are a professional in every respect. Your preparedness, steady demeanor, and commitment to the public service have earned the respect of the board members, both past and present. Your contributions have left a lasting impact on the work of this board. On behalf of the board, we extend our sincere thanks for your years of dedicated service. We are deeply grateful for your leadership, your counsel, and your unwavering commitment to excellence. While you may be stepping back from the role of General Counsel to the BOPC, we suspect this board has not heard the last of you. Institutional knowledge such as yours does not retire. It simply becomes even more valuable. We are pleased that your relationship with the municipality will continue, and we will look forward to the future opportunities to benefit from your experience and wisdom. Thank you, Marty.
Thank you.
Becky is going to say a few words, and then we're going to have a little presentation.
Hi. Yes, we'll do it after I say a few words. Yeah, so I'm just going to speak as a board member on behalf of board members now and in the past, what I can. Marty, I just want to say thank you again. Even in these few short years that I've had the chance to work with you, and I know Josh and a few others, we've had our challenges. And we needed that breadth of knowledge that you had and have an experience that you have to really guide us on a number of things. We've improved our training pieces. We trained with the chief solicitor for the municipality, and Marty stood ground for us on a couple of things, which was extra nice to see him sort of challenge John. But that's what we needed. We needed because of your knowledge and because of the arm's length that we are from the council and the municipality. The other a few other things that we've had around independent reviews and our complaints processes, things like that. We've really pushed you, I believe. And when we pushed hard and we had two lawyers on the board, they were extra generous with their challenges. And again, you stood firm with the work that we needed to do, the guidance we needed and the understanding of the legislation that we have to follow, the understanding of the relationships we have with two services who are, one is a oversight, one is advisory. And so it's not been easy. The good news is there's more changes coming and you don't have to figure those ones out. Chris does, but we know that you're only a phone call away for him, and we appreciate that. We've already taken advantage of that, so that was very, very generous. So at this point, it'd be nice to present you with a beautiful plaque.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know what I'm stepping.
Yeah, don't fall.
No
Don't
fall. Yeah.
Can I hold this up?
Yes, absolutely. All right.
That was the joke. Smile, was it? Yeah.
We should read that though.
Yes.
Yes. I don't have my glasses on. Okay, Halifax Board of Police Commissioners extends sincere appreciation to Martin Ward QC for your contribution to the Board of Police Commissioners during your tenure as board solicitor. Your measured approach and solid leadership on the governance decisions of the board were instrumental in our success. HRM is being served by our police agencies from a stronger position of oversight and accountability because of your guidance. Your dedication and commitment are appreciated. So that's
Wow.
Now, before we allow you to say anything, we're going to ask our chiefs to come up, Chief McLean and Chief Superintendent Duff. They have a small token of recognition as well.
Where is it? Here, I'll find it for you.
Do you want to start? Or do you want to... So good afternoon, everyone. So I've known Marty for a long time. Martin. Known Marty for a long time. And I'll echo everything that Greg and Becky already said in relation to Marty. But I'll just want to add in terms of, so we've worked together on contract negotiations, collective agreements, and we continue to do so. Marty's always one that allowed that makes decisions based in the law, regardless of where that falls, with just the right smattering of a little common sense. Because sometimes the law and common sense aren't necessarily congruent. But so I've always respected your opinions. We haven't always agreed at the day, as we shouldn't. But at the end, I think we've always respected one another. Certainly, I've respected your work in the board and the other things in policing. And we wish you all the best. It's not like you're retiring today, but but we wish you all the best in the work you've done at the board. And certainly, I just want to thank you and for your friendship over the years, buddy. Thank you.
And I echo all the words that have been said. It's been a short time. I've got to know Marty, and I do appreciate the common sense approach and experience that weighed into all your input, all your decisions. And on behalf of Chief McLean and I, we have a little presentation which I can read out. It says, presented to Martin.
This one's shorter.
Is it?
Okay.
I hope so. In recognition of your service as General Counsel with the Board of Police Commissioners of Halifax Regional Municipality, with gratitude and respect.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Gotta get the.
I get to keep it? Yeah.
Place of comment.
Yeah. So, being a lawyer, never lost for words, always sees an opportunity. I wanted to thank the chair. I want to thank the vice chair. I want to thank the commissioners. I wanted to thank the chiefs, the police generally, and the people, the support staff who are here constantly supporting them, whether it be here or whether it be back in their duties day to day. As you would know, this is not a position that lawyers generally find themselves in, where people are saying a lot of nice things about them, okay? And so this is somewhat unusual. You know, I was thinking on the way over, you know, lawyers are frequently the subject of jokes, as you well know, right? And the one that came to my mind on the way over was the business that had to do with the weather, right? And forgive me if you've already heard this, but you know, it was so cold out this morning, right? So how cold was it this morning? Well, it was so cold that the lawyers had their hands in their own pockets. Okay. Where are your hands, Chris? That's it. Okay, good. So I digress. I've been doing this legal work for the Police Commission for many years, at least 15, but who's counting? And I wouldn't want you to think it's the only work I've done, but I've done it for quite a length of time. Now, two things unwittingly happen when you're doing this work for that length of time. The first thing is that hopefully you gain some expertise in police governance. And I say hopefully because, as you know, some people have 15 years experience, some people have 1 year experience 15 times, okay? I would hope I'm in that former group. The other thing that happens is that people around you come and they go, and what that makes it, you end up as the sort of corporate memory for the whole thing. And to some extent, I've become the corporate memory for the Police Review Board. So there are very few people who would go back to the early days of the police board the way I did. I see Bill is sitting there looking at his phone, half smiling, but Bill would remember, probably the only person in this room will remember what I'm about to say. And that is that there's been a remarkable evolution of this board from the time that I was first involved with it. When I first encountered the board, the meetings weren't public. They weren't advertised. They were held up in, as most of you would know, the Meisner boardroom in the police headquarters. I don't think public even knew there was a police commission at that time. And Bill, you would have attended some of those, I assume? And so there was, they weren't advertised, there was no public, there was no RCMP, there was no community safety, and only occasionally was there even a lawyer at those meetings. There were no policies, there was no administrative manual. And police governance, and with respect, Bill, okay, to Frank Beasley, who was the chief at the time, police governance largely consisted of the chief briefing the board on what the force had been up to lately, and then everybody would go home, okay? So contrast that with what the board is today. This board is clearly the provincial leader in police governance. It's a model for all other boards in the province, and perhaps a model for the transformation as we're going to have into community safety boards by the province. And that metamorphosis can be attributed largely to the capable work of a series of chairs and commissioners over the years, and also by the necessity of the increased public attention to policing and governance that Becky referred to here, right? And in particular, you know, the issue of street checks with the Wortley report, the issue of defunding and the Jones report, and the police approach to homelessness and the independent civilian review of the police response. That's just to name a few of the things that have occurred over time. I would think that as part of what's been a long legal career for myself, perhaps too long for some people, that I was able to contribute to that evolution in a meaningful way. I leave my work with the board knowing that it's in capable hands with Chris. Chris has the benefit that he has no other lawyers on the board at the moment, right? So, and I'm not falling off the earth. I remain available to Chris as a resource to the extent that he needs anything, which I anticipate will diminish rapidly in the next few months. So thank you again for this recognition. This does mean an awful lot to me. It's nice when you reach a point where you've done something so long and someone actually publicly recognizes it. So thank you very much and good luck to everyone. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, everybody, and for helping us recognize and celebrate Marty's very lengthy history in serving the needs of the board and all the residents of HRM. We'll move on to item number 2, community announcements. Are there any community announcements? Barring none, we'll move on to item number 3, approval of the minutes from our February 23rd meeting. Can I call for a approval of the minutes? And we need to move. Thank you, Commissioner Hinch, for moving that, and Commissioner Akindoju for seconding. Is there any errors and omissions in the minutes that anybody would like to bring to our attention? All right, we'll call for the question. All those in favor of approval of the minutes signify by saying aye. Motion carried, unanimous. Thank you kindly. We'll move on to item number 4. So approval of the order of business. Madam Clerk, are there any additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda?
Chair O'Malley, there are no additions or deletions to the agenda, but I would like to note one change in item sequence. The clerk's office is requesting that item 10.4.1, which is Commissioner Carter's motion to learn what steps were taken to have HRP take on a new policing responsibility by participating in the federal gun buyback program, be considered after item 10.2.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Can we have a motion to approve the order of business with this noted change? Thank you, Vice Chair Kent. Seconder, please. Thank you, Commissioner Bezic-Escalard. We'll call for the question. All those in favor of approving the order of business as read? Thank you. Motion carried, unanimous. Any business arising out of the minutes, Madam Clerk? I don't believe there's any.
That is correct, Chair.
Thank you. So we'll move on to call for declarations of conflict of interest. Commissioners, does anyone have a conflict of interest to declare as a result of any item on today's agenda? Barring none, we will move on to item 7, deferred business, which there is none. Moving on to Section 8 for correspondence, petitions, and delegations. Madam Clerk, is there any correspondence to note?
Chair O'Malley, the clerk's office did not receive any correspondence or petitions for this meeting.
Thank you kindly. And no presentations under 8.3. Nothing under 9. Items to be brought forward. So we'll move on to reports, and we will start with item 10.1, Halifax Regional Police Royal Canadian Mounted Chiefs update. So like we did last time, we'll have both chiefs do their presentation, and then we'll have questions. And then we'll move on to our community safety update. So we'll start with Chief Superintendent Duff.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioners. I'm going to just start with a couple of quick numbers here on the monthly update. In respect to proactive calls for the month of February, HRD was able to complete a total of 5,005 calls for service with 1,973 proactive calls. So we're still continuing to build upon our proactive measures, which is very promising and should serve us well. In the respect to traffic, they conducted 949 traffic stops, which resulted in 770 tickets being written. Respect to IPV for the month of February, 148 IPV-related calls with 43 deemed to be high risk. Some of the highlights, on February 2nd, an officer patrolling Highway 102 in Goffs observed a Hyundai Elantra traveling south and queried the license plate, and it came back as the registered owner was a suspended driver. Ultimately, the vehicle stop resulted in the driver being arrested, and based on a search of the vehicle, the seizure of 11 1.75 bottles of alcohol and items that were stolen from a grocery store in Elmsdale. The driver and his 2 passengers were ultimately charged for possession of stolen property. Both passengers in the vehicle were also on probation and were charged with breaching the probation order. On February 3rd, our CMP officer on proactive patrol queried a Dodge Ram license plate on the Forest Hills Parkway. And again, the query of the plate came back and identified the vehicle's registered owner as suspended. Traffic stop identified the driver as a 38-year-old from Grand Lake and was issued summary offense tickets for 2 motor vehicle acts violations. A male passenger who was also identified was ultimately arrested on 2 separate warrants held by Halifax Regional Police. Prisoner and the individual was transported to the Halifax Regional Police Prisoner Care Facility. February 3rd, RCMP HRD responded to a report of an indecent act on a walking trail near Arklow and Amaranth Crescent. A 72-year-old woman reported that a man exposed himself. During the course of the investigation, a second victim from October of 2025 was identified. As a result of the investigation, a 23-year-old man from Cole Harbour was located and arrested and ultimately charged with 2 counts of committing an indecent act. So successful. February 3rd, RCMP HRD SKU team and HRP and RCMP emergency response team safely arrested 2 men and a woman at a hotel in Dartmouth Crossing as part of an ongoing firearms investigation. During searches after the arrest, officers seized a prohibited handgun, conducted energy weapon, sensory irritant, quantity of cash, a 22-year-old man, a 28-year-old female, and a second 37-year-old man were ultimately charged. February 6th, HRD CART investigated a hate-motivated incident that occurred at a hockey game in the Eastern Shore Community Center. On February 24th, a 39-year-old man from East Chesapeake was arrested for mischief in relation to the incident. On February 9th, at 4:10 a.m., RCMP responded to multiple 911 calls reporting a light-colored sedan traveling the wrong way on Highway 102 near the Aerotech connector. Officers learned the vehicle had pulled over and turned its lights off. Upon arrival, officers located the driver unresponsive behind the wheel of a Cadillac DeVille. The man was awakened, showed significant signs of impairment, and arrested for impaired driving and transported to the Lower Sackville RCMP detachment. At the detachment, the individual refused to provide sample of his breath and was ultimately charged with impaired operation of a motor vehicle and refusal to comply with a breath demand. On February 10th, RCMP HRD, with the assistance of HRP, responded to a report of an armed youth who had committed a robbery on a public transit bus. Officers learned that a youth was on a public transit bus in the area of Poplar Drive and Portland Street when the armed youth pushed them into a seat, pointed a handgun at their chest, and demanded the sweater and the ski mask. The victim complied and was able to get off the bus at the next stop. The victim was not physically injured. RCMP officer observed the youth suspect and safely took the youth into custody. With the assistance of HRP K9, officers seized an imitation firearm and the victim's stolen property near the residence. Youth was charged with robbery, assault, utter threats, possession of a weapon for a dangerous purpose, and numerous failed to comply with release conditions, as this individual had been previously charged for 2 similar robberies on the transit system. And on February 16th, RCMP HRD and EHS responded to a man slumped over in a vehicle at a business in the 800 block of Sackville. Officers learned the man had spent about 25 minutes in a public washroom before being found unconscious in a Honda Fit. Upon arrival, officers awakened the man and observed the vehicle. The man was arrested, and a subsequent search of him located cash, drugs suspected to be cocaine, fentanyl, scales, and sensory irritant spray cans. Significant weapons and drug charges are being faced. February 18th, RCMP SKU team in partnership with HRP Quick Response Unit arrested a man wanted for firearms offenses. This individual had been wanted since 2020, and a subsequent search of the residence following acquisition of a search warrant located a handgun that was loaded, a second handgun, 3 prohibited magazines, a rifle, and various ammunition. The man is now facing over 43 weapons charges. Traffic enforcement during the month. I mentioned the numbers earlier. We've recorded a steady increase in traffic stops and enforcement over the first 2 months of the year. Between January 1st and February 24th, there was a total of 1,381 traffic stops, 1,009 summary offense tickets, and completed 128 patrol. Speeding fractions made up 23% of the tickets issued, while February saw that number rise to 32%. So again, the excessive speed remains a significant safety issue on our roads. I would also like to mention that this past Saturday night, a number of us from the detachment took part in the coldest night of the year walk, fundraising for Souls Harbor Mission, an unbelievable turnout, and they were able to reach their fundraising goals to support their program. So it was really, really nice for a number of us to be a part of that. Incredibly, valuable outfit. They do so much good work. And we will await questions, but that is my report.
Thank you, Chief Superintendent. Chief McLean.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, recognize Martin Ward for his work over there. It can't be understated in terms of the amount of work and effort he put in over these number of years. You have big shoes to fill there, Chris. So I'm sure you look like a big guy, and you should probably have big shoes. So there you go. So from a recruitment and recognition perspective, so last week at City Hall, at the end of the week, I had the honor to present badges to 4 of our new police service dogs: Spirit, Libby, Goose, and Yogi. They put on quite the show at City Hall, and so it was a great celebration of the K9 unit and their dedication to public service. Again, my congratulations to the dogs and their handlers, as they will be an asset certainly to public safety and HRM. From an investigative perspective, on the 26th, we charged a man with firearms and drug offenses after an ongoing investigation led to a search of a residence in Halifax. Drugs, money, multiple firearms, ammunition were seized. A 43-year-old man is arrested, faces multiple charges, including possession of weapons, tampering with the serial number on a firearm, possession for the purpose of trafficking, and possession of property obtained by crime. My thanks to everyone involved, including the RCMP, HRP Quick Response, and the emergency response teams. On the 22nd of February, we responded to a call in the area of Green Road in relation to a firearms call. A 21-year-old man had been located suffering from gunshot wounds. He was transported to the hospital with serious injuries, and the suspect had left the scene. Approximately a short time later, approximately at 7:40, RCMP members located and arrested the suspect in a vehicle in the Cole Harbor area without incident. The firearm used in this incident was also located and seized near the initial scene. A 30-year-old man appeared in Halifax Provincial Court last week to face charges of attempted murder and multiple firearms-related charges. I want to point out, though, the great work of everyone involved, the responding officers, the RCMP, and the IES person whose work led to the quick apprehension of the suspect in a taxi. Great work by everyone involved. On the 8th, we also responded to a report that someone had been stabbed at the McDonald's on Spring Garden Road. The 19-year-old victim transported to the hospital, which were believed to be non-life-threatening injuries. A short time later, a 19-year-old man was also apprehended by officers and faces charges of attempted murder, aggravated assault, and assault with a weapon. You would have heard from both me and John. I think, I want to note that, there's been a lot of work done this month, particularly since our last meeting in relation to illegal firearms. 2 other incidents that occurred on the 19th of February, just hours apart. Officers conducting a traffic stop in Bedford after observing a vehicle fail to stop at a red light. Traffic stop led to a firearm being located within the vehicle and subsequently seized. The driver and passengers were arrested. And then just 2 hours later, in a separate and unrelated incident, officers observed another vehicle operating illegally. And during that stop, a firearm was also located in the vehicle and seized. Driver and passenger were also arrested. Great work by the responding officers and work that came out of patrol members doing traffic enforcement. I can also say the ongoing efforts of roadside checks continue on a regular basis, because I got stuck in one last night coming back from my late basketball game on Gwimpel Road. And but it's great to see the officers out there, doing their job to keep our roads safe. From a domestic violence perspective, we received 305 total reports of domestic violence, no charges in 156, and charges laid in 149. 16 were designated as high risk, and there was a critical development in 21 files. I also like to note that this morning, before I came to work, I stopped by the Northbrook Training Center and was able to give some introductory words to our IPV training for our new cadets that started this week. So it's a week-long training curriculum led by Dolly Mosier and her team. And like I said to them this morning, you know, all your training is important. There's no doubt about it, but some is very important. And this is one of the day in terms of, you know, that as Dolly pointed out, that it could be one of them actually that saves a life in terms of their work dealing with domestic violence. So I just want to, you know, they will have guest presentations and presenters in all week, including people whose lives have been personally impacted by domestic violence. So I think that it will be a very good learning experience for them this week. From a firearms perspective, there were 0 homicides related to firearms so far. We have had 7 shooting incidents, 63 firearms taken into possession. From a traffic update, we issued 939 summary offense tickets. There were 28 charges laid for impaired operation of a motor vehicle and 11 suspensions issued. And as well, this month focuses on occupant restraints or seatbelt safety. So we remind motorists to always buckle up before you start your vehicle. Last week, I had the distinct honor and pleasure of presenting the family of Constable Sinclair Williams with a certificate of dedication as renamed a media meeting room in our police headquarters after him. He was the first Black police officer hired by Dartmouth Police Department in 1968. I actually had he passed away in 2014. He had suffered from a lengthy illness that cut his career short, but he certainly was a trailblazer for Black Nova Scotians pursuing a career in policing. And to hear from his family, his wife, his children, about the man he was, not just as a police officer, but as a husband and a father, was great to hear. As well, on the 21st of February, Halifax Regional Police participated in a fun-filled hockey game with the African Nova Scotians Advancing Selects, organized by Hockey Nova Scotia over at the RBC Center in Dartmouth. And the post-game discussion included an opportunity to learn about the Halifax Regional Police Science Program and what it takes to be a future police recruit. What I can tell you is Team Simmons, coached by Deputy Chief Team Simmons, beat Team Matthews 4-3 with a goal scored in the last 3 seconds. So, but it was a great day to see the number of youth and their families that showed up, both to interact with policing in a fun manner. I can also say last week I played on the police basketball team with against John Martin Junior High up not too far from here. We eked out the win down at the end, and they all came to the realization that the chief can still ball. So it was a good day. And this coming Friday is Employee Appreciation Day, where we'll be celebrating our employees this week. But certainly know that I extend my sincere thanks to all HRP members, sworn and civilian, every day for the work that they do. And just last Saturday, I, along with Commissioner Hintz, was partying the night away at the African Heritage Month Gala, and along with Deputy Chief Simmons. So it was a good, little media came from it, but it was a good night had by all in terms of, so for the end of African Heritage Month. So those are my comments. A little bit.
Thank you, Chief. We'll open the floor to questions. Commissioner Hinch.
I don't have any questions really. I just want to say also happy belated birthday
Thank you.
to the chief, as he celebrated his birthday that night as well. So that's all.
Cameras are rolling.
Somewhere between 57 and 59. You can average it out.
Any other questions for the chiefs? Commissioner Bezic-Escalar.
Thanks, Chair. A question for Chief Superintendent. So thanks for bringing up the traffic stops and the specific case of I think you had described it as an officer running a plate leading to an arrest for outstanding warrants. I was wondering, from a technology perspective, I'm picturing that situation was an officer who just saw the plate and decided to run it. do we or do you use like an automated license plate recognition program? I know the parking services does for parking related stuff, but I don't know if the police do for these sorts of things. Over.
To the commissioner through the chair, we do not have any APVs at present. It's something we're examining for sure, but just because of the very reason, as I explained, very, very valuable, and even more valuable when cars and vehicles have a front plate, because you can run thousands in the course of a shift. And having people who are on conditions, curfews, suspended drivers show up, make our roads safer. So not yet, but it is certainly in discussions.
Thanks, Chief Superintendent. I know that it always comes down to budget and funding and stuff, but I would suspect that would be something of interest if that was something that came up in future.
If I could just add to that, we too do not have that, but as we move forward with our body worn camera, in-car camera program, that is a technology that would be available as we move forward.
Thank you both. So Chief, you beat me to the question there. I do have a question for you though as well. Thanks for the stats on the traffic. I heard in the news that the traffic enforcement unit was now full at 10 officers. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to verify that.
Yeah.
Good to know. Great, thank you.
Any other commissioners? Questions for the chiefs? Chief McLean, when you said for the body worn camera and the in-vehicle cameras that technology would be available, does that mean we have purchased that option, or and it will be coming as part of that future
No, I
rollout?
think there's obviously more discussions to be had around,
Okay.
but it is an option within the suite of programs that moving forward.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to item number 10.2, Community Safety Update, and Executive Director of Community Safety, Rachel Bohm, who's going to give us an update. Over to you, Rachel.
Thank you so much. So an important part of community safety's work is our work, prevention work with children and youth. We organize and host a child, youth, and family response table monthly called CHART, where partners from throughout the community come together to coordinate trauma-informed responses, share knowledge on emerging youth issues, and strengthen frontline workforce supports. In January, we held an important session on commercial sexual exploitation of children and youth, and we had 51 service providers attend. So key takeaways from that day are that commercial sexual exploitation involves any sexual activity under age 18 in exchange for something of value, and it is a form of sexual violence, and the risk increases where individual and social vulnerabilities intersect. Grooming often involves meeting unmet needs, building dependence, and isolating youth. And warning signs can overlap with typical adolescent behavior, making context and relationships with youth critical. When responding to disclosures, it's important to listen, believe, and be transparent about the duty to report. Avoid rushing to fix and prioritizing safety, choice, and trust. Discussion highlights included the connections between victimization and perpetration, the importance of culturally responsive approaches in our municipality, and the value of early preventive education. There was strong interest in school-based education, violence prevention, bystander intervention, and community-level safety strategies that will inform other work with our business unit. Moving on to housing and homelessness, we've continued to monitor those living in designated and undesignated encampments closely with the recent severe weather. To reduce people's risk resulting from exposure to cold temperatures and severe storms, our team is working toward a more structured approach to encampments to ensure appropriate spacing of tents and to target reduction of refuse accumulation that had contributed to fire conditions last summer. And we hope to have these plans in place before the spring, summer, and increase of fire risk comes along. Our efforts continue to be to focus on working with individuals We cannot house groups of people. We need to work one-on-one with each person. Many complex factors are involved in each person's barriers to housing, and we continue to work away at that. An update on our care pilot. We're making great progress on integration with police and IES, and our patrol referrals to care are within sight with hopefully a launch date of April. IES integration details are also close to being finalized, and I should have more information on a launch date by our next board meeting. It has been determined that the care team can manage referrals from a larger geographical area. So that is currently under review by our operations committee, and changes will be announced soon. That's great news, as it will give access to this important service for more citizens in the HRM. I'd like to talk about a couple of items that we don't often hear about at the board, but an important part of the community safety portfolio, which relates to emergency management. So while our ability to respond as a municipality to emergencies is crucial, we also have significant roles to play in emergency preparedness. And there are two programs that are very important for citizens and community organizations to be aware of. Our Voluntary Vulnerable Persons Registry, which is targeted to residents with who experience severe difficulty with any of the following: mobility, vision impairment, hearing impairment, developmental disabilities, cognitive impairment, mental health conditions, or any resident who requires electricity for life-sustaining equipment such as oxygen or dialysis. So people can self-register for the Voluntary Vulnerable Persons Registry, and there's an intake form on our website. When the emergency management is aware of an incoming event, we can send a notification to these citizens to give them early advice about how to prepare for the incident. As well, during the event, our office can send a follow-up notification asking registrants to indicate whether they are safe or they need a phone call from staff for assistance. It also gives a way for emergency responders to know where people are in instances of severe disasters or emergencies. Finally, an important part of emergency preparedness is to sign up for Halifax Alert. So this program is ongoing and is available on the Halifax website. So individuals can sign up for Halifax Alert and be notified of things that may impact travel routes or upcoming weather events. And it's an important role that each citizen can play in being prepared. That's my report for this month. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rachel. We'll open the floor to questions. Commissioner Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rachel, thanks for the presentation of the work that you and your team do. Two questions around the housing homelessness piece. Could you share with the board our conversation at our budget committee with regard to the drop-in center and stabilization center? So just give everyone an update where those things are. And on the last thing, emergency management preparedness, do you know the numbers of how many people are on the voluntary vulnerable persons list and how many people have signed up for a Halifax Alert?
Through the chair to the commissioner, I don't have those numbers, but I can follow up and
Yeah,
get them.
that'd be great. Thank you.
In terms of the budget discussions, two items. So the stabilization center was a proposal from a number of years ago to have an alternative location for people experiencing public intoxication, open to all substances, but that particular model of stabilization center is more useful for people experiencing public intoxication by alcohol, just due to the nature of the symptoms of that. We have faced serious challenges finding space and really have exhausted all options in terms of securing space to lease space to run this service. And therefore, it was put forward as a potential budget reduction, since it was money in our budget that we have not been able to actually implement that program. And instead, we're recommending that we focus on our care pilot, in that it is also an excellent way to respond to people using substances who may need support in public spaces. The drop-in center was another proposal that has been around for a couple of years that hasn't been able to be operationalized due to lack of space, being able to acquire a suitable space. As well, the landscape around drop-ins have changed. There's been some recent drop-in centers in Nova Scotia that have created community safety issues for their neighborhoods in which they're located. So for those reasons, we're just looking at alternate proposals. We do hope to use some of the budget. We're not proposing to lose all of that budget, but about half of it, and use it for an alternate option to meet the needs that communities are experiencing in terms of people who are experiencing homelessness, who might not have a place to go during the day to connect with needed services.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other commissioners for questions? Commissioner Bezic-Escalera?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Ms. Ohm, for the update. Glad to hear about the expansion of care. I'm looking forward to hearing how that goes. I think it just reinforces how valuable it was to do the pilot in a small area to prove that it works before expanding. So I think that's great. My question is about group housing. You mentioned unable to house people together. That has just triggered a thought. Like, has that ever been a thing that we try to group? I mean, many tend to form groups when they are unhoused for protection, for community, and so on. I wonder if it's ever been explored that group housing might actually make sense for some, or.
Through the chair to the counselor, I actually was intended to say each person's needs are so individualized that when we are working with groups of unhoused people, we really do need to get down to the individual level in terms of like sitting down with them, discussing what their barriers to housing are, what their needs are, what their mental health and physical needs, behavioral challenges might be, in order to match them to the options that are available. The options themselves, some of them are individual apartments, some are more rooming house setups, some would be supportive group homes. So we do look for people who can live in group environments for sure.
Any other questions for Rachel? Thank you, Rachel. I would note, just kind of related, I don't know if everyone saw it, but it was a lovely story, obituary in the paper for the woman who passed away at one of the encampments, who suffered from, a life of great challenges, addiction, and her family wrote a beautiful obituary that's making its way around. Her name is Erica Joy Accent Hilton, and just one sentence at the very end. And I encourage you to go to look at it and read it. It really opened your eyes to the complexities of it. And the comment was, we as Erica Joyce Hilton's family are telling her story because in doing so, maybe just one life will be saved. We want the addict, the family, stranger, friends to understand that they're not alone in the battle of addictions. It's a beautiful obituary. Encourage you to read it. Chiefs, in particular Chief McLean, you shared with me a story that I just wanted to bring to everybody's attention because it's a really good, important story. I won't read the details of it for privacy reasons, but you shared that there was an individual going through mental health crisis who was actually at the QE2 center waiting for treatment. They were in a very difficult situation, and they reached out to share that an officer impacted their life and changed that trajectory and had a significant impact on that. I'll just read just a sentence or two from what was shared. And they're talking about the officer, Tammy McDonald. So this individual, had a direct impact on someone's potential outcome in mental health journey. And the comment was, Tammy's presence transformed what could have been an isolating and terrifying experience into one where I felt protected and seen. She treated me not as a problem to manage, but as a person to care for. That distinction matters more than I can properly express. Her actions were heroic and honorable. I genuinely believe she altered the trajectory of that night for me, and I hope she reserves the recognition. So I'm sure you'll do that in the fullness of time. Just wanted to share that.
Well done, Greg.
Vice Chair Kent, did you have an information item that you wanted brought forward at a future meeting?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have number 3 in the information reports on today's agenda, memorandum from the Commissioner of Public Safety dated February 13th regarding Halifax Regional Police Strategic Plan. And we'd like to bring it forward for the next meeting if possible. It's timely.
And that would be March 25th.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to 10.3, and we're going to go to 10.3.1. We're going to have a presentation from Brittany McLean, Project Manager for Shared Mobility, and as well Roddy McIntyre, the Director of Traffic Safety. Oh, sorry, we did adjust the agenda. My apologies. We have moved item 10.4 up at the consent of the board, so we are now looking at item 10.4.1. Commissioner Carter has brought forward a motion, and I believe, unfortunately, Commissioner Carter is unable to attend today. And I believe that Commissioner Bezic-Escalard is going to read the motion in.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So on behalf of Commissioner Carter, I'll move on his behalf that the Board of Police Commissioners for the Halifax Regional Municipality direct the chair of the Board of Police Commissioners on the, there seems to be a typo, just give me a moment. Okay, motion that the Board of Police Commissioners for the Halifax Regional Municipality direct the chair of the Board of Police Commissioners on behalf of the board to send a letter to the Halifax Regional Municipality's Chief Administrative Officer requesting further information regarding the municipality's involvement in the federal gun buyback program, with such information to include a description of the research undertaken by the municipality in preparation to make the decision to participate, and the risk factors the municipality believes would be associated with both its continued participation in and its termination from the federal gun buyback program.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Commissioner Hinch. We shall move to questions and answers. Commissioner Bezic-Escalard, would you like to introduce the motion?
Thank you, Chair. So again, on behalf of Commissioner Carter, who sends his regrets for today, he asked me to provide both the motion as well as to share the rationale for his motion. So I'll just read verbatim from what he's provided. So the reason for the motion. Keeping policing costs down, the board should be looking at removing police functions rather than add to them, further straining the resources. The public is asking to lower policing costs and focus on local policing issues. Second part. Protecting HRP officers' mental and physical health by not overworking officers who are already stressed and burned out. Increased overtime is a risk factor for burnout on officers, which can lead to sick time, mental and physical issues. And third, the loss of public trust in police due to the following. Lack of engaging directly with those most affected by the law and decision. The federal government did not engage legal gun owners in the process. Halifax Council did not, and HRP did not. Going after a marginalized group in society. Firearms owners are now the largest marginalized group in Canada. Loss of rights, privileges, and freedoms that are afforded all other Canadians. Provinces and territories have opted out because they want their police resources focused on criminals and criminal activity at the local and regional level. This is federal law, and the federal government can and has allocated resources to deal with this matter. No need to duplicate it using our limited resources. So those are his comments. I'll pass it back there.
While you have the floor, did you have any comments of your own that you wanted to share?
Sure, if no one else is on the list.
Yeah, there are.
Okay, I'll yield to others who have.
Commissioner Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it's unfortunate that Commissioner Carter is not here, but it's a bit of a bizarre motion, in my opinion. I question the fact why it's even on the floor. It sounds like he's not in favor of the federal decision with these gun registry, which is fine, but this is not the forum for it. I mean, the decision to proceed, my understanding was made by the chief, the CAO, and the commissioner of safety to proceed. In the words that Vincent spoke for, Commissioner Carter, he talks about the costs and things of that the sort. I understand the costs are going to be covered by the federal government. I understand it's officers that are not taken away from their day-to-day duty. These are officers that are on their time off as an extra duty officer. I really question this motion. I don't think it belongs here. I wish Commissioner Carter was here to speak to it. So because of that, I won't be supporting the motion that's on the floor. Thank you.
Other commissioners? Vice Chair Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm in agreement with Commissioner Mancini. I'm not in favor of this. I find it delving into the operational side of the police operations. This is a decision of the chief and his administrative team to proceed with something that has been pretty much is covered all the costs and associated work. The thing that I struggle with is some of the wording here. I think there's a lot of assumptions in this, not necessarily data driven. I think that there is a language that I struggle with, like going after a marginalized group in society. I think that's inappropriate for this forum. It's an opinion, exactly. Our chief and chiefs, I guess, in this case, not I guess it is, the chiefs in these cases are every day looking for an approach to having guns off the streets. That's been a mandate of their work for as long as I've been here and longer. And this has been presented to the municipality in a way that is to me a tool. Again, it goes into operational, but the assumption here, another one, is that criminal focus, suggesting that provinces and territories have opted out because they want their police resources focused on criminals and criminal activity, as if these weren't. Our police services aren't. And getting focused on criminals and criminal activity, well, in this area, we know we have guns out there that are creating criminal activity. So it just makes sense to utilize that to reporting it. I find it a strange and bizarre sort of approach to this. There was no sense from a board level that we would there's well, first of all, there's no ask for a report. Then we get some of that information, perhaps. No ask for a report here. And that this is a letter directly to the municipality with no supporting information that we would have had a chance to debate. So at this stage, I'm just not going to support it. I'm hoping others don't support it. I think if there is a report in the end that Commissioner Carter wants to bring forward in a way that is useful data, not assumptions, not opinion, but information that that might suggest that something is not happening within the work that our chiefs would be doing, that's a better approach to this than the way we've been presented this. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Kent. Commissioner Akindoju.
Yeah, I want to ask that my colleague be a little bit fair on him. He's a new member. This shouldn't have come here, but I'm not happy with the kind of words that the Vice Chair has used concerning that report. We should have just, like you said, stepped this down because of it's probably inappropriate for this moment, but I think you've gone too detailed with that. He's a new member. And maybe this calls for a bit of procedure on raising, what do you call it again? What do you call his, before he comes to the meeting, So we look at it, yes, the process, we look at it such that we don't have this kind of words being thrown on a member because he's totally out of order here, which we all know. So I would say, look, we're not going to vote on this for now, and we'll step down on discussion. Thank you.
Commissioner Bezic-Escalard,
Uh,
are there any other comments or, oh, well, why don't we go to Virginia and then we'll come back to you, Vince, and then potentially you can close things off. Commissioner Hinch.
Thank you. Reading this motion and reading what he's put here, I've never felt so uneasy in all my life. I never felt so concerned. When he says going after marginalized groups in society, firearms owners are now the largest marginalized group in Canada. Loss of rights, privileges, and freedom that are afforded all other Canadians. I mean, I can only take this in a way that is just as an African Nova Scotian. I cannot, there's no possible way that I could support this as it's written right now, or I just don't understand it, to be honest with you. I wish, the commissioner was here so we could have the conversation, but unfortunately, I cannot support this as well.
Commissioner Bezic-Escalard, did you want to wrap things up as well?
Sure. Thanks, Chair. I guess just to clarify, just to clarify, I think, as I understand the motion, it is to ask the chair to write a letter on behalf of us as the board to ask the municipality for an explanation or description of the research that led to the decision to participate. So there is an ask for a report to come back to us, and I think ultimately that is what Commissioner Carter is asking for. I agree with the discussion around the board that the reasons stated here are contentious, but I think they also reflect some of a large element of public opinion on the direction where this has gone, and I think some of the correspondence that we received reflects that as well. My take is that it seems to me the uptake on this is going to be low and not account for the $650,000 that we're supposed to receive from federal government. So I actually have a question. I'm not sure if it could be entertained at this point, but just put on the chief's radar. If it doesn't actually cost $650,000 in officer extra duty time and admin to do this, do we actually get to keep the difference, or you get to keep the difference and use it for other things? Because it seems reasonable if that is the case. Maybe you,
To the commissioner, no, this is not a make money. This is
okay.
Use the money for what you need to
Okay.
to do the program. So this, 100%.
Thanks, Chief. I think from the reason and from the public correspondence that came in on this, I think there is a conflation of participation in the buyback and the overall program itself. So as I understand it, the buyback, our participation or HRP's participation in the buyback is to allow those who choose to participate in this time-limited, cost-limited option to take advantage of it locally rather than having to figure out some other force somewhere else to do it. So it is an extra service for Haligonians who wish to participate in this, to put it out there. It's not in and of itself an active confiscation of prohibited weapons after the amnesty period, and that would be an operational decision that would come after the fact once that amnesty period expires. So, and that would be something that is an operational decision for the chief to balance against competing priorities for enforcement. I agree with the chief's rationale that it was well put that there is an absolute reduction in risk in the community when there are fewer firearms in society, or words to that effect. For example, with suicide deaths. So there's good evidence for reducing the number of weapons in society that leads to a reduction in suicide deaths. So the Swiss, for example, our Swiss colleagues in the military, they found that by reducing weapons held at home, by 20%, it was part of a reduction in weapons kept outside of barracks, led to a reduction in deaths in suicide by men by 5%, due exclusively to reduction in weapons at home. And this is amongst people who are well trained and well qualified to have the weapons. They also found that no substitution to other means of suicide was seen. So that was a net gain. Our colleagues with the Israeli Defense Force also found that after conscripts were required to leave their weapons at home, there was a reduction in suicide by 40%, again, amongst people who were trained to use these weapons and were not presumably going to use them for illegal purposes. Simply not having the weapon at home led to a reduction in suicide. I would guess that the evidence for this would be somewhat weaker in Canada in that the rate of suicide death by gun is a bit less than what it is in Switzerland. It's 16% in Canada as opposed to 33% in Switzerland. So that overall reduction may be a bit less. And we also may see some more substitution in Canada because firearm death by suicide by firearms is less common than hanging. So most people would probably hang and may switch to hanging if they didn't have a firearm. But going back to what the chief said, there is good evidence that shows that reducing access to weapons reduces the risk of intimate partner violence, particularly in those households where there was already an intimate partner violence restraining order. The evidence is, I couldn't find any evidence showing that reduction in firearms amongst those who do not already have an IPV-related restriction order would reduce the risk of subsequent IPV. But I think that is kind of like the logical rationale that, everyone is law-abiding until they're not law-abiding, and that reduces the risk of that possibly ever happening. Women, of course, are disproportionately impacted by firearms use in situations of domestic violence, representing over 90% of firearms-related violent crimes committed by their partner. And even the presence of weapons at home can be a huge deterrence for seeking resources or leaving the relationship. And that's been found in surveys of survivors of domestic violence. So I think going back to the chief's rationale, I think it makes sense why HRP is part of it. And that all said, the motion is for a report on the considerations leading to discussion. So I feel like I would support the motion in order to allow that question to be explored. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kent, or Vice Chair
Yes.
Kent?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So first of all, I just want to say to my colleague, Commissioner Akindojo, that if you felt that my comments were out of line, I do apologize for that, but I'm not going to apologize for speaking to the words that were read into the record that are on this paper. Those are the rationales that have been put forward on this program, and it seems very opinionated and assumptions, a lot of assumptions. So I'll stick with that and leave it there. And as far as being new, I agree that there is he is new, but he would have had some training and such. So, we all have the ability to learn as we go here. The other piece that I'm concerned about is that we're asking the Board of Police Commissioners to send a letter to the Halifax Regional Municipality's Chief Administrative Officer. Why would we not be asking our HRM colleagues here? We have the Commissioner of Public Safety. Why would we not be engaging with a staff report for the Board of Police Commissioners that would go to ask for it from Public Safety? That it just seems like this is a twisted up kind of approach to do it. I still will not be supporting it at this time. I think we can do better, and I'd like to make sure that we do support Mr. Carter, Commissioner Carter, and on creating something that he can bring here that to me would be more fitting and something I potentially could support as well as other commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Kent. Any other comments from any of the commissioners? Ready for the question? All those in favor? All those against? Motion failed. All right, we'll move on to our presentation on micromobility enforcement. So we have Brittany McLean, Project Manager, as well as Roddy McIntyre, the Director of Traffic and Parking Management. The floor is yours, Brittany.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners for having me. My name is Brittany McLean. I am the project manager for the Shared Micromobility Pilot Project that launched here in HRM last spring. Shared Micromobility, if you're not familiar, is the shared e-bikes and shared e-scooters that you see around on municipal property. In 2023, council approved the 2-year shared micromobility pilot. So we launched again last spring. We will relaunch again this spring within probably the next month or so, depending on weather. This will be the final season before we bring it back to council for a decision on what to do going forward. When it was approved, the format that was approved was that HRM would oversee a privately owned shared micromobility operator through an agreement. So HRM does oversee, and I'll get into it, a private company that is operating these rentals. At the same time that council approved the pilot project, they also approved new bylaw M300, which is the micromobility bylaw. That was approved to enable e-scooter use. So that's private e-scooter use as well as this shared micromobility system as well. It also approved the ability to have shared micromobility in the municipality and to establish the rules of the road. So the municipality went through a 2-year a request for proposal as part of the 2-year pilot. It was awarded to Bird Canada, which is a Canadian company that operates in over 25 Canadian cities. The pilot launched on May 15th, 2025. We paused service on December 15th, 2025 for the winter due to winter conditions. We are expecting, as I mentioned, to relaunch probably in March, April 2026. This is all weather dependent. It's very snowy out there. The snowbanks are quite high, so we are watching the sun melting and keeping our eye on the weather. If you are not familiar, the vehicles are blue or bright orange, so they're pictured there. I don't believe we have any orange bikes out as of right now, but the e-scooters that have been brought out, the newer model is the bright orange. It's all the same company. And also helmets are provided for free on each device. So the service area is pictured here on the map. When it originally started, it was a bit smaller. We went through an expansion. So it includes Peninsula Halifax, downtown Dartmouth, goes all the way up into almost Bedford area. I believe it stops right before Mill Cove. And then it goes up into Spryfield. When we go over into Dartmouth, it captures parts of Burnside, out to Westfall, into Woodlawn, Cole Harbor area, and then Woodside, as well. So the service area, during the pilot, it was expanded to build out and serve it in phases. This represents the first 2 phases. This year, we are looking at a 3rd phase expansion. I don't have a date for when that will happen and the boundary. We're looking at the service area right now, but that will occur at some point this year. And in 2025, so that was from May 15th to December 15th of last year, there were 122,557 trips taken on these e-bikes and e-scooters, predominantly used on e-scooters. So the parking areas are specifically designated. You are not, members of the public, those who are using these are not allowed to park them just anywhere. I'm going to take you through a few photos of areas and the few different types of infrastructure that we're using right now for the designated parking. So all of the parking areas will pop up in the app. If you download it on the smartphone, it'll show you every designated parking area. They're all geo-fenced by Bird Canada, and the municipality reviews each spot before we allow them to distinguish it as a designated parking area. So some of the types here in the photos, you can see the ones to the left of the slideshow is pavement tape. So this is like a type of tape basically that it adheres to pavement areas. The sense of this is it'll show up on the app, but then it also gives members who are using them like an actual visual guidance to say, here's the box, park the device within the box. Another type that we use is virtual parking. So this one here is just down on the waterfront. There is no tape on the ground. We do have a few of these areas. They are geo-fenced. So when the device gets parked, you do have to take a photo of your device on the app before it's approved, and it'll turn off the billing for the rental. And so some of the areas are virtual as well. Then we have our on-street parking infrastructure types. So we have on-street corrals. These are similar to the bike corrals that you've seen, I think, for the past few years. They do have bike racks in them. The ones that are used for shared micromobility do not have bike racks in them. They do have the flex post green bollards that markate them, and they will have paint this year as well on the ground. Those take up like one vehicle parking space. The one picture there is on Grafton Street, and we have one on Preston Street. We're looking at maybe shuffling the locations a little bit this year and probably putting a few more out. We also have existing bump out areas. So these areas, the ones in the photos here, one is outside the YMCA in Halifax, and then the other one that you can see there is in the Hydrostone area. So those are existing bump outs that before, in the winter, they are used for snow storage, but in the summer, they're just kind of empty spaces. Some of them have been designed to shorten crosswalk lengths for vulnerable pedestrians crossing crosswalks. Those have proved as very good areas. I'll go into some of the complaints that we've been receiving and how the complaint process works, but these areas have served as the lowest areas for complaints, so the best we're getting people parking them correctly the most in these zones. So there's 3 sources of regulations for shared micromobility. I'll go through each of them. The first is through a legal agreement that we have with Bird Canada. So that's between the municipality and Bird Canada. The agreement lasts for the period of the 2-year pilot. So it covers the number of devices that the company can have out, the service area, and things like operating fees. It also has a list of service standards that Bird Canada must meet during the 2 years that they are operating. So within the service standards is the requirement for Bird to address emergency obstructions. So an example of that might be blocking building access or blocking a fire lane. Those are to be resolved within 30 minutes of becoming aware, and then within 60 minutes for non-emergency areas, unless they're considered an emergency. So these staff regulations, are enforced by municipal staff. 2025 data from Bird Canada shows that for the majority of the improperly parked scooter complaints and bike complaints, the average response time was under the 30 minutes. I'll get into some of the complaints and how they're captured as well in a moment. So the second way that shared micromobility is regulated is through the Micromobility Bylaw, M300. So the bylaw regulates where devices are permitted to ride, what the maximum speeds are, and allocates parking. It also regulates, like I said, shared micromobility being permitted within the HRM right-of-way. So if you're not familiar with it, up here I've got a couple sections. So the operation of electric kick scooters are only permitted on roadways with a speed limit of 50 kilometers an hour or less, on bicycle lanes on any roadway, and on multi-use pathways within streets. Operators of e-scooters are not permitted to ride in excess of 25 kilometers an hour on a roadway or in a bike lane, in excess of 15 kilometers an hour on a multi-use pathway or on a sidewalk, or in a park unless designated by the executive director of parks. So we do have a website. There is e-scooters permitted in a piloted area. There's a list of parks that they are currently permitted in. The bylaw finally relays that parking of e-scooters in a manner that obstructs the flow of pedestrian, cyclists, or vehicular traffic is prohibited. So these are enforced by municipal compliance. So I'll take you through kind of what happens when something comes in. So HRM compliance staff take a photo, they ID the number of the improperly parked device while they're out on patrol. Each device has their own number. They'll move it to a location where it's no longer obstructing the sidewalk. And after that, they call Bird to come pick it up. So compliance staff are currently unable to issue summary offense tickets for this bylaw currently. There is a section in the bylaw where there could be a fine. This is something that we're looking into as well. For helmet infractions, compliance officers kind of politely ask the rider to stop. They can ID and issue the rider a ticket, but in events where riders refuse to give the municipal enforcement officer ID, compliance can then call HRP to have them to get the rider's ID to issue that summary offense ticket. So the third set of regulations are in the Motor Vehicle Act and the upcoming Traffic Safety Act. These regulations that I'll read out guide the municipal bylaw policy that was created. So in the MVA, there's a definition that defines electric kick scooters and allows them on municipal roads. Has a minimum rider age of 14, maximum speed 32 kilometers an hour, unless municipality sets a lower limit. That riders follow cyclist style rules. And then it allows municipalities to set the local bylaws, for example, where scooters can be ridden, which is the policy that I previously read. Also, you're probably familiar, has the helmet requirement as well. So the TSA, which is not yet in effect, will effectively replace the Motor Vehicle Act. The scooter rules in that will move into flexible regulations that can be updated more easily through the municipality's ability to set the local bylaw. So that includes age, speed, equipment, and where scooters can operate. It does, though, keep the helmet requirement as well. So essentially, from my understanding, the Traffic Safety Act will kind of strengthen municipal flexibility through the municipal bylaw to allow for updates to policy a little bit quicker and easier. Like I said, the helmet law does still apply through the TSA, and then when that is active, it'll just kind of streamline and modernize e-scooter regulations that move the details into flexible regulations that can be updated because this technology is kind of ever evolving. I wanted to share too, the shared micromobility operator, Bird Canada, does also support enforcement in a few ways as well. So Bird Canada lists rules and requirements on their app. So if you open up the app, it does teach you go through a kind of a learner's course, teaches you about the no double riding rule, that helmet is required, and where you can ride the devices. We also, when we've had public safety instances, for example, last summer when with the risk of wildfires, there was a rule to not enter into wooded areas. We were able to communicate with Bird, and Bird was able to put a push notification in the app to say, hey, please do not go in the woods, like follow your local restrictions. And that comes up right as the person goes to rent the device. Bird also sets slow ride and no ride zones. So what those do is actually automatically slow or stop devices once they enter them using geofencing. So they coordinate with us on that. If there's a multi-use pathway where you say, hey, there should be a slow ride zone, we want as you're riding the device, we want the speed to drop down to 12 kilometers an hour or whatever it should be. They'll put it in, and then each device, once it kind of hits that geofence, will automatically start slowing down and turn off if it's a no ride zone, but it will safely stop the device from working. They also impose financial penalties for offenses, such as improper parking, sidewalk riding, and unsafe riding. Those range from about $5 to $15 per offense. So Bird Canada does also suspend users who repeatedly disregard the rules, and they impose a strict account termination for any instances of illegal or extremely unsafe riding, such as pedestrian harassment cases or riding with a minor. So I did bring some information from Bird Canada. In 2025, the company issued 172 fines and banned 4 accounts. Lastly, I'll just note that when you sign up for the app, provincial photo ID is required to register for an account, and that is to help prevent underage riders. I should note that the Motor Vehicle Act allows those who are using personal e-scooters to be 14 and older, but with the shared micromobility rentals, you must be 16 or older to use them. But if you're age 16 or 17, you do need parental consent to do that. So I'm just going to quickly go over how complaints come into the municipality. We receive them through 3 main channels. First is Bird Canada. Second is through our municipal 311. And then the third is direct into our staff email inbox. So those emails that come to direct staff are generally from councillors who are hearing from their constituents, or other HRM departments such as transit, and oftentimes to the public. So the shared micromobility pilot, the way it was designed is that it places responsibility on the private operator, which is again Bird Canada, to manage and respond to complaints. So Bird Canada in their RFP has detailed all of this, but they do have dedicated staff and technology to track the issues such as improperly parked devices and resolve them within that set time frame. So the complaint data and response times are recorded by Bird Canada literally the minute an operator picks up the phone, the complaint is made, then they dispatch it to their staff to go and actually deal with the parking obstruction. And then they share all of those timestamps with the municipality that we observe as well. The most common complaints that are come in include improperly parked devices and sidewalk riding. So in 2025, the municipality received under 200 complaints. I say under 200, it likely is less than that, but sometimes we do have cases where someone will call 311, also call Bird Canada, and then also send a staff email. So it's counted 3 times. We've tried to effectively, the best way to do it is through Bird Canada directly. And sometimes when people do call 311, 311 will say, okay, great, in this circumstance, you should call Bird directly, and then they'll capture all of the data for us. Anyway, so we look at all of that data and some of it does overlap. So we are confident to say that it's been at least under 200 complaints that came in that year. And we'll track them again this year. So based on those complaints, like I said, we're continuously monitoring them. And we work with Bird Canada to improve the shared micromobility services throughout the pilot. So when we do have a parking complaint, if it's too close to a private property or someone has an issue with it, that complaint comes in, we will work with Bird Canada, and we've moved the parking designated parking areas that I had showed earlier. There's hundreds of them around the municipality in that service area, and the flexibility of the pilot allows us to change those up quite quickly. We can do it within a few minutes. Bird Canada will wipe it off the app and say, oh, that's not a good parking area anymore. Let's look and reconsider somewhere different. So we work with them every day to switch those up and make sure we're finding ones that are working better. Now, quickly, I'll just go through some of the pilot upgrades that we are looking for this year. And the aim of these improvements are to hopefully improve compliance further. So we're looking at installing physical docking stations. Those would be in high use areas, high demand areas, or areas where we're getting high amounts of complaints. We're looking to install more of those on-street parking corrals that I had mentioned, installing possibly signage at parking locations to let users know exactly how to use the system and how to park properly. We've been doing this last year, but again, we're doing it this year as education and promotion events. These are designed to share information on helmet requirements, safe riding, and proper parking. Bird Canada hosts these all through the summer. Sometimes they'll join in on civic events. They'll go down to the waterfront. We're looking at possibly going into high schools and talking with high school students as well. We've also done them with university students. And then lastly, I just wanted to note that the municipality is also launching a survey for the public to provide feedback on their experience with shared micromobility, whether they used it or not. The survey is designed to include questions so that the municipality can understand things like user experience, education rates with the bylaw, and then compliance with local regulations. And this is also so we have an understanding to help improve that system. So that's everything for me. My information is up here. We also have a website, halifax.ca/shared micromobility, that has more information, but I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Brittany. Are there any questions for clarification? Commissioner Mancini and Commissioner Inch.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Brittany, thanks for that presentation. Thanks you for your work on this. I know you've been really focused on this. Wearing 2 hats here, the commissioner and the councillor, we do get inundated with the complaints. First of all, let me be crystal clear, I'm very supportive of this pilot. In fact, I really want to make sure it's no longer a pilot. We land in a place that we can coexist. I'm fortunate to travel in many countries, and we see them all over the place, right? So we have to figure out how to make it work here. It's the enforcement piece that we get the complaints about. the helmets, as we do for people riding their bicycles without a helmet, driving on the sidewalk versus being on the road, where the location, the parking, illegal parking of them, the dangers amongst pedestrians and especially seniors that are intimidated by them because they can go at quite a speed, right? I think you said 30 kilometers. They truck along.
25.
25. Still, you truck along, it's pretty good. So those are the complaints that we get. I guess, and I'm glad that it's here at the Board of Police Commission for discussion. I'm looking to police and obviously the HRP. That's where they're located. I mean, who does the enforcement? You talk about our folks doing the enforcement piece on it. You talked about compliance officers that they can ask for ID. Did you say they can ticket? Did I hear that correctly?
The compliance officers
yeah.
can ticket.
Did you say they can?
So right now and maybe I'll get Roddy to come up here and give a more of an explanation, but when the bylaw was passed, the summary offense ticket ability was not passed with it. It does have to go through a process. Did you want to quickly talk about the process?
Good afternoon, Roddy McIntyre. I'm Director of Traffic and Parking Management. So as Brittany pointed out, so there was apparently a bit of a disconnect when the bylaw was put through, and I don't believe our compliance officers have the ability to issue a ticket at this point because it wasn't added to the list for SOTs. So there's a bit of a disconnect with that. But based on the information that we have and that Brittany presented, we haven't received a whole lot. Am I correct? That would be we haven't had a whole lot of instances brought to our attention where we would have been in the situation where, and my group, where I oversee parking. So it's my parking compliance officers that are out there doing their parking enforcement duties that are helping to, since they're already boots on the ground, helping to address some of the issues.
Yeah, so I think it's a big issue because, are we looking at HRP to be stopping people? And I mean, the same argument with those riding a bicycle without a helmet. Yeah, it's illegal, but is that the best use of our officers? But that law still should be enforced. So I don't know where we are with that actually changing, or where the province is entertaining that or they're ignoring it. Because I think that's the biggest issue. And the other piece is did I hear you correctly, Brittany, that you're supposed to only leave them in designated areas? So there's the other problem. We see them all over the place. And how quickly you talked about how quickly the bird will respond to an obstacle. But I mean, I've seen the same bike or scooter left for days in the same spot. I mean, there's the other complaint we get, that they're left in places they shouldn't be left.
Yeah, through you, Chair, to the councillor. So there are quite a few designated areas. We do get calls in through 311 where someone might say, oh, the scooter's been left outside for a day or two now, you should come pick it up. And we do have to explain this is actually in the right of way, a designated parking area. It might be one where there's no tape on the ground and it's more of a virtual one.
Signage you talked about before.
Yeah, so signage I think will help improve that, and also getting them on getting more physical infrastructure instead of just the virtual areas. But we do get some of those complaints coming in. Sometimes though there are devices that are left for X amount of days, and then we follow up with Bird. I should note too quickly that Bird Canada meets with the municipality and our municipal compliance every 2 weeks during the season. So there's quite a bit of communication of hey, this is what our compliance officers are seeing out there that maybe isn't getting called into Bird, and isn't captured through complaints. So we do meet with them often to look at strategies for improvements.
I'm wondering, Chief McLean, if you would mind, I mean, what's HRP's take on this stuff and, for enforcement? I know what it is, but if you could share with us, because I think that's important, because we need to help Roddy influence our folks in the province to give them the authority, our already existing parking officers to do that kind of work. Chief, you wouldn't mind?
Through the chair to the commissioner. I don't think it's not something that's on our priority radar. In terms of, not saying that it couldn't, I think legally, I think there's a place, that where it exists, naturally, not naturally, but in terms of the legislation, statutorily, but it's not, I couldn't tell you this day how many SOTs related to scooter use was, I'm going to guess it's a pretty low number, just for lack of.
And that's my point, Roddy. I think we just need to get that legislation in place so our officers can do the work. To expect HRP to do it, I think is unrealistic. Yeah.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, to the counselor or to the commissioner. I've also been actually in some conversations and it not directly related to the micromobility, but some other bylaw items
Sure.
actually with the Commissioner Moore. So there are some, I guess, some levels that we need to look at what either are say, and I'm just going to use parking because they're my crew. What sort of things parking can currently do? What sort of things we could potentially have them do, and really what sort of things are maybe a little bit beyond what they should be doing.
Yep, that's fair.
So it could be the fact that it's a little bit above what the compliance folks are doing, but it's not quite at the level where, you know, the HRP or RCMP can or should be doing. And there's conversations about how we can try to address that.
I appreciate that. I will tell you, your parking folks, when I see them, I introduce myself to them and I chat with them. They love their job. That's pretty cool, man, because, you know, people aren't making them a cup of tea when they show up and give you a ticket. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
And do you do that so that they will give you a ticket?
Oh, is that right? Maybe. Possibly.
All right, Commissioner Hinch.
Thank you, Chair. So unlike Commissioner Mancini, I have I'm on the fence when it comes to the micro-mobility, campaign. I get a lot of calls as a counselor with regards to, them being in the right of way on walkways and things of that nature, whereas somebody that's in a mobility scooter that can't get by, or somebody who's vision impaired who cannot get by, or they somewhat trip over them or things of that nature. So one of my questions is installing physical docking stations. What does that entail? And is it like are they plugged into something? Is that that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Through you, Chair, to the counselor. The docking stations that we're looking at, because it's a pilot, they won't be like electric charging stations like you see in, New York City or some bigger cities. It will effectively be, we're still kind of refining the details of the design, but effectively kind of like similar to a bike rack, but quite a bit longer. So it would hold, 10 devices or so in certain areas. It would be within the right of way. There's clearances that we're looking at to make sure that if devices are parked within them, that they're not obstructing sidewalks. But the goal of having an actual physical docking station is that it guides kind of like usability when you're using it, like, okay, here's the bike rack, here's exactly where I should park it, as opposed to them being left even outside of the taped lines or especially in virtual areas. So keeping them more orderly and giving people a lot more guidance to be parking them.
So when a person is riding a scooter or a bike and their time runs out, are they to find a place to park it, or do they have the ability to do that? Because once the money runs out, then I assume they just leave it.
Yeah, through you, Chair, to the counselor. So when you're renting the device, the clock is ticking and your credit card or whatever you've used to make payment just continues until you park the device.
Oh, okay.
So what happens is you'll pop up on maybe you're done your ride and you're like, okay, I'm ready to go to my destination. You'll pop up the app and it'll show you, oh, there's a parking area just right there. So let me just go bring it over there. It'll prompt you to park the device and then take a photo of it. And when you do the photo, the app, you kind of have to do a 360 to show, and AI is basically picking up, oh, okay, this is the building, this is the designated parking area and where it's allowed. And then if it's outside of that area, and of course there's like a bit of a buffer with georeference or with geofencing, if there's tall buildings that can throw it off. But essentially, you would park it there. The app would then say, oh, yep, perfect. It's in the designated area and you can stop your ride. Although someone could just pick one up and push it into an area. I mean, it's not solidified and locked. Like at that point, if someone's ended their ride and parked it, any member of public could pick it up, move it wherever they want. It'll start beeping at you to tell you like, hey, you're moving it and it shouldn't be here. But that's effectively how the parking works in the designated parking areas.
Okay. What about the helmets? How are they using the helmets? I've seen some people not use the helmets. So
Yeah, so I think there's people who aren't going to be using helmets, people using their own devices, also not using helmets as well.
Yeah.
There's encouragement through the app to unlock the helmet to be able to use it for free. A lot of people, are like, oh, sanitary wise, I don't want to use a helmet that's been used by other people. You don't have to use the helmet. You could always carry your own helmet as well and bring it
Okay.
around with you. The
Mhm.
helmet's there for ease of use and to encourage those using it. We are trying to do like educational campaigns. We're talking with university students. We're looking to get into high schools to explain, there is still a helmet law, even though you're using the rentals. The same thing applies as if you were going to use your own e-scooter or e-bike. So we're trying to work on awareness campaigns and get the education out that needs to be worn while you're using devices.
Thank you.
Commissioner Akindoju.
Thank you very much, Chair. First of all, I think this is really an HRM stuff. It's not really board our responsibility. This should go to. That's why you're wearing two caps here. You should be wearing one, and so to address that. But honestly, Brittany, I want to thank you so much for bringing us a detailed information. It's a private setup. It's a private company. I would support it any day, anytime. If it's done properly, the issue of compliance, the issue of rules. For example, you simply mentioned the issue of geoparking. Geoparking is that the bike doesn't stop charging your credit until you drop it somewhere. Keep charging them. Put a higher penalty. Nobody will dump the bike anywhere. Put a penalty at $1,000. They will not either rent your bike or they will not put it. Then secondly, the issue of parking racks. There's nowhere in the world that you have bikes that you don't have parking racks. You need to do that. If you do not do that, people will dump it in those parking spots. So it's just a simple dialogue between HRM and the private sector to put in the right things. Now, the general things is that it's a mobile item, like a car, like a bicycle. If a police sees you that you are not putting on your helmet, they'll stop you and charge you. If you speed more than, and you can control speed, those bikes, limit the speed on the bike, simple, electronically. It cannot move faster than this, no matter how much you want to press it. So the issue of 50 or 100, just control that electronically. There's so many devices that you can control. So these issues are very, very simple. It creates job opportunity. It creates revenue. Why should we want to kill it? It's just all we need to do is sit down with these owners and sit down with HRM and put in 1 or 2 or 3 compliance issues and control issues, and everything will just fix them well. So I'm in support with what you're doing. Keep doing well. She says it's a pilot. Now they've learned a lot, and I guess they would go back before the sun starts to rise and put some racks on the road and make some corrections. That's, I think, what we want to talk about. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. There is a distinction, though, between this shared program where there is the ability to control the devices and then the private sectors who buy their own. There's no control mechanisms. Yeah. So we're not able to limit the speed on, the one that mom and dad bought Johnny, and Johnny can fly down the street at 60 kilometers an hour. Right. That's the more problematic area. Just a question, though, about the geofencing. You said we only allow them on streets that support 50 kilometers an hour or higher. Does that mean in school zones and, it's blacklisted and that's geofenced out? You cannot drive it down the street where there's a school zone?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we consult with Bird Canada to let them know areas that we identify should be a no-go area.
Yeah.
I know they also have, so the devices are in the municipal right of way, but then they also have contracts with the universities and on university property. And they do the same thing with them where they'll sit down and say, oh, we don't want these devices being ridden through this pathway on the university property.
Yeah.
So they will declare that area a
Yeah.
no ride zone, and effectively, like once the geofencing picks it up, it'll stop it. We do that for any roads that are over 50 kilometers an hour. We have put layers on the mapping to say, no, the device will just come to a stop in those areas. As far as school areas go, on school properties, the devices would not be permitted unless there's a designated parking area. But as of right now, there's been no consultation with school zones to have them on school property. They have been near school properties up on the municipal right of way. But essentially, if any school or if we encountered a problem, we could definitely have Bird Canada put no ride zones
Right.
effectively wherever we find them would be fit.
And Commissioner Escalera is going to jump in here probably with the last question, just one small one. This is a pilot. Is the intention to open the market up to more service providers when the pilot's over?
It would be up to council. So I'll go back to
All right.
council with a
Thank you.
report with recommendation.
Commissioner Bezic-Escalera.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for the presentation. 123,000 trips with only seems under 200 complaints and 172 fines seems like it was a success, and most people are riding as they should be. My question, I had a lot similar questions to the others, but my main question is injury tracking. Does Bird track injuries related to the use of these? I imagine that they could be able to, based on a rider would want to report it because there might be insurance issues. Maybe the device has a GPS or speed tracker that recognizes patterns that are related to an injury. Can you comment on that? Over.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner, through the chair. So the Bird Canada does have a spot on the app where you can say, hey, I was injured while I was using this device. I believe they had 4 that were noted to Bird through that app. But it's something that we've been interested even before the pilot launched. It's something that the municipality's been working with Nova Scotia Health on. So at this point, I've been working with a few doctors to sort out getting that data back into emergency departments. Like, are we seeing people come in? At what level of the injury are happening? What were the conditions that happened during the injury? Was it because the road? Was there suspected impairment? Was someone wearing their helmet? Those types of things. We're hoping to do a survey. It's one of the doctors that I'm working with is looking at having a survey done by physicians in all, I think we're looking at 3 or 4 emergency departments throughout the HRM, and then hoping to do that over the summer, then collect the data, and then I'll be able, whatever we do have reported back, I'll bring that back to council on. But as of right now, even micromobility in general, whether it's shared micromobility or just personal bikes, personal e-scooters, the way the municipality gets that data right now is through HRP reports. And so that only happens when there's an incident that, someone involves a motor vehicle. And so it wouldn't be capturing necessarily issues where someone was using a device and fell into a curb and injured themselves that way. So we're hopeful that this information will give us a lot more background and understanding into how people are getting injured, and then that will help inform our policy going forward as well.
Just a question for the chief. Would riding these intoxicated be considered impaired driving? Worried about the accidents.
It's probably more of a, depending on how fast and what their output is. The Motor Vehicle Act stipulates what is a impaired operation of a conveyance. I'm not exactly sure what it is off the top of my head. My thought would be no, but hard to say. I have to actually look at it specifically in terms of what the Motor Vehicle Act actually constitutes as a vehicle or a conveyance. As a boat, for instance, sure, clearly, right? Yeah.
Thank you, Chief. All right, no other questions for our team? Thank you very much, both. Very informative. It is. Oh, it appears to be a first glance. Okay, first glance, it appears to be an impairable offense. Commissioner Moore was just looking it up, and it appears that if you're drunk while driving an e-scooter, you could be subjected to impaired driving. All right, we're going to move on to 10.3.2, Halifax Regional Police participation in the RCMP H Division Sexual Assault Investigations Review Committee. We have a presentation from Superintendent David Boone, who's the head of the Criminal Investigative Division. And as well, there was a information report regarding this in your packages. Superintendent, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. As you said, Dave Boone, Superintendent, Integrated Criminal Investigation Division. I gave you, the board and chair, a presentation on this several months ago. This is just an update to a recommendation to continue. Again, a brief background. In 26, Board of Police Commissioners asked to work a plan that contains 4 key pillars: develop, engage, adapt, and evolve. Focus of the evolve pillar centers around evolving police response to critical areas identified by community stakeholders and public safety. An action item associated with this pillar is moderating HRP's participation in the RCMP's sexual assault investigations review committee process. In December 24, BOPC directed the Chief of Police of HRP to participate in this program for a trial period of 12 months and to return to the board with an update and a recommendation as to the continued participation, which is why we're here today. Again, just as a follow-up or a review, the Sexual Assault Investigation Team, or we call it the SATE team. Sexual violence is one of the most underreported types of crime. The Integrated Sexual Assault Investigative Team investigates adult and child sexual assaults and child physical abuse in the Halifax Regional Municipality. And this is an integrated unit with HRP and RCMP investigators. SATE is a unit within the Special Victims Section of the Integrated Criminal Investigation Division, and like I said, involves members of HRP and RCMP HRD, who are all trained, qualified specialists in this field of investigation. In recent years, the SATE team has focused on training, education, and strengthening relationships with partner agencies to improve our overall response to these investigations. Supports offered prior to conducting an interview with a survivor of sexual assault. SATE investigators offer to connect the adult survivors with victim services, and as well there's a process for independent legal advice through a program simply called ILA, which provides free independent legal advice to adult survivors of sexual assault. All interviews with adult survivors take place in a soft interview room where there's access to additional information on support services. That would be hard copy flyers for whatever community services we could bring in, as well as a lot of those are now our e-flyers, so we can email those to survivors as well during the process. Prior to a SATE interviewing a child in relation to a sexual assault investigation, the CSTAR program will be offered. CSTAR brings together professionals from law enforcement, child welfare, healthcare, mental health, and the justice system to create an integrated approach to investigation, assessment, and treatment of suspected violence or abuse. SATE will often interview the child or children at the CSTAR office, which is designed specifically for children and youth, and that is at the IWK. The SARC role and responsibilities. SARC is comprised of provincial, independent subject matter experts across governmental and non-governmental organizations, all of who sign the required non-disclosure agreement. The committee is responsible for reviewing a sexual assault investigation, which were cleared without charges to ensure that appropriate steps are taken. The goal is to provide investigative oversight to ensure investigations are thorough, timely, impartial, and properly classified, as well as to identify any systemic gaps and barriers. Investigations are selected at random prior to each SARC meeting, with the unvetted file material securely completed, prepared, and transferred. No sexual assault investigations are excluded from being selected for review, including those involving children. And as I stated last time, those files are randomly selected by RCMP crime analysts in Ottawa who have access to our records management system here in Versadex. The SARC meets 2 to 4 times a year. Since our participation, we've met in the third or in the last session in 24, and we participated in 3 in 2025. Each committee member is responsible to review a single file individually and in depth against an agreed set of standards. And again, we went over in the last presentation that I could review one file at a time, Having said that, I could also review 3 files in one day, depending on the complexity of the file I'm reviewing. The SARC members access to any audio or video interviews which were completed during the investigation, officer notes, reports, monitor notes associated to the file. Following the review, the SARC may find the investigation was completed in accordance with best practice, or they may make recommendations including, but not limited to, having that investigation reopened for additional investigative steps, or the investigating officer receiving feedback. To date, HRP has participated in 4 SARC meetings, which took place on the following dates: December 24, May, September, and December of 25. With our participation rolling into SARC with the RCMP process, it was designed specifically to go on a graduated case assessment. So we started off low at 4, moved up to 6 or 8 in May. I think we were up to around 10 or 12. And then in December, we hit 14. Continuing on in this for 26, I would suspect our numbers would remain at 10 to 12. And that could go up or that could go down depending on the complexity of the files that are chosen for that one review process. So a total of 34 files were reviewed at the 4 meetings. Like I said, 3 in December, 8 in May, 8 in May, 9 in September, and 14 in December. But I would suspect they'll stay pretty constant between 10 and 12. 2 of the 34 files which were reviewed through the process have been reopened to confirm that specific tasks were completed. And when I say reopened, they weren't reopened for investigation, but they were follow-ups were reopened to ensure that whatever was brought up in the review, it could have been clarification of the task. It could have been addressing a reviewer's notes. But so that's happened twice, but these files weren't opened again, I'll say for secondary investigation. A number of files were reviewed related to either historical complaints or cases where the survivor did not wish to proceed with the investigation. Overall, there's been consistent feedback by the SARC members that investigators displayed a trauma-informed approach when dealing with survivors. Committee members also provide helpful feedback, reminding investigators to review safety planning with the survivor and to provide information on available resources such as victim services. HRP believes it's important to have sexual assault investigations which were cleared without charge reviewed by an independent committee to ensure that appropriate steps were taken. While the fact that no significant issues have been identified thus far by SARC, by the SARC review, reviews could be considered a positive reflection of the best practice of HRP and RCMP in the integrated unit in this area. We are always looking for ways to improve our service delivery, especially to vulnerable victims. I believe there would be value in continuing the participation in the SARC process for an additional 12-month period. Would be my recommendation. It's the end of the presentation. If there's any questions.
Yes, please. Yes.
Thank you, Vice Chair Kent, for agreeing to read the motion in.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Move that the Board of Police Commissioners for the Halifax Regional Municipality recommend the Chief Officer of Halifax Regional Police to continue participation in the RCMP H Division Nova Scotia Sexual Assault Investigations Review Committee process for an additional 12 months and return to the board in February of 2027 with an update and a recommendation as to continued participation.
Thank you, Vice Chair Kent, for moving that, and thank you, Commissioner Akinjoju, for seconding it. In relation to this motion, would anyone like to ask any questions, clarification for Superintendent Boone?
No.
Commissioner Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Superintendent Boone, thank you very much for the presentation. How many years on the force, if you don't mind me asking? I don't want to date you. The chief was alluded to his years of service, but you know.
Chief's got me beat in HRP, but I got him beat overall.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
36 years.
Wow, amazing. And how long with this team?
almost 31.
Yeah, I mean, amazing. Well, thank you for your service, sir. I truly appreciate it, and I mean that. So this is I'm very interested in this topic. You know, sexual assaults is something that we recognize is continues to grow and grow. And for you to continue to say every time you're here that sexual violence is mostly unreported, which is concerning. So how do we get to a point where if it's happening, that it is reported? You mentioned the 34 files reviewed. Do you know offhand how many cases there were in the 12-year period? You said you reviewed 34, but how many cases all do we know that number?
Our total caseload in the
Yeah,
12 months?
Yeah.
I don't.
Okay.
We actually spoke about trying to endeavor to get that number for today. I don't have it today, but I can absolutely get that for you.
I would mind, but I suspect, I don't know, I'm guessing it's in the hundreds, I would think. Is that fair to say, or?
It would be fair to say it would be probably north of 400.
North of?
400.
Okay, yeah. So out of that 400, we reviewed 34. And you mentioned they're chosen at random, and then I understood you said that's the RCMP and analysts in Ottawa picks them. Do you know how they choose it? Well, how do they?
I don't have the exact, so they're chosen on, first of all, case type, cleared no charge.
Something that does not get charged, okay?
There's no charge has been laid.
Yeah.
So that would be the main, so when I say, let's take that 400 number.
Yeah.
That's 400 total files, not 400.
I understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then would be that specific number of cleared, not by charge. So the analyst would go in and that would be a random sampling, whatever their algorithm is or their process is to get those files. And like I say, we kind of go in with a number and say, okay, we're going to take 10 this month or 12 this month.
Right.
And there's usually a bit of communication prior to that meeting with the coordinator. So we know we're not going to roll in there with 30 files and not be able to look at those investigations in the 2 days. So we'll try to come to a number that's attainable and reasonable for the committee. But that's the main indicators, files that have cleared not by a charge.
So you talk about the committee and you talk about the subject matter experts. So could you describe, I'm not looking for names, but what are the types of roles that make up the committee? You say they're subject matter experts.
Right. There's I believe there's Crown attorneys. There's people from representatives from the other community groups, probably advocate groups in there.
Okay.
So, and I'm not sure if Department of Social Services is involved or not.
Okay.
But it's across governmental and non-governmental organizations.
And are you literally sitting in a room together?
I've never participated in one.
Okay, you haven't. Okay.
So when that process happens, one of the NCOs or one of the sergeants from our team will go over there. And I'm not exactly clear on how the breakout is, if everyone's in the same room or they have their own separate rooms. But the NCO is just there for specific questions.
Right.
It's kind of not guiding it at all. We're just there as a resource.
Answer policing
Correct.
questions.
Yeah.
How am I doing for time there, Mr. Chair? Am I running out? So I think in your slide, you talked about superintendent, the role of the review. And my understanding, what we're reviewing is the investigating process. Is that fair to say? That's what we're looking at?
Best practices in these types of investigations, yeah.
So what I was surprised is that when we saw the recommendations, they were very, respectfully limited on what recommendations. You said we all could improve. So it was really surprising to me. So we've got 400 plus cases. We're looking at the ones that didn't, there was no charges laid, randomly picked up 34, and there's very little recommendations. It's surprising to me. I mean, if we're talking getting better, Team USA won the gold medal, but they're looking at how to do it better next time too. And I don't mean this to be negative to policing. I'm really looking at the issue of these sexual assault cases, and the fact that it's on the rise. It's concerning to me. So and the recommendation is to continue on using the same reviewing process when we know there's other reviewing processes out there is a bit concerning to me. And I'm a bit challenged in saying to agree to continue on for another 12 months. So I know there's others have questions. So I'm going to listen to my colleagues and then, because I do have a motion I want to bring forward, I want to hear from my colleagues first. Thank you, Superintendent. I appreciate your work.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Akindoju.
I just wanted to say, I read the document and I just wanted to thank you because it actually brought down a lot of information that I didn't even know about. So, and he said that, so there's no point repeating that, but thank you.
Just for clarity, so that that's 400-ish cases in HRP. And is this committee an a province-wide committee looking at cases across all of Nova Scotia, both not just HRD, but HRP and every policing jurisdiction in Nova Scotia? Superintendent Duff, you're rolling to the microphone.
Yes, Chair, slowly, and it's attached to me. Every province in Canada with the RCMP has a similar review process. So outside of HRD, that's how it would be occurring.
Right, I'm just trying to understand. So this group meets 4 times a year. They're looking at 12 files on it. I'm appreciating that this is probably 12 files, HRP files,
That's correct.
and that the group is it HRM, HRP?
It's integrated CID files.
so it's
So that would
HRD.
be,
Okay,
to the
full.
chief super's point, that there would also be files being reviewed during that time period outside of HRDs or HRP or HRM.
Okay,
like
so we're doing
provincially.
12 HRP files, and that group at the same time over those 2 days are doing a bunch of other files as well.
Correct.
Okay, and so,
It would be, it could be a combination of HRP or HRM files, correct? The 12 files could be both something that occurred in RCMP jurisdiction or something that occurred in HRP
Correct,
jurisdiction.
yes.
Right, so it's HRM. The
Yeah.
12 files would be sexual assaults occurring within HRM.
yep, and then plus anything else inside the province within the H division.
Yes,
Okay, any idea?
I don't. I don't know. I don't, Chair, I don't know the
Yeah.
numbers
okay.
for coming outside of,
All right.
from outside of CID.
No. Okay, cool. Very cool. Thank you. Commissioner Bezic-Escalante.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for the presentation. I think my questions might kind of stem from what Commissioner Mancini was talking about, is this process the best process to be doing the review? So 2 specific questions. So one, you mentioned that 34 files out of about 400. Is there capacity to evaluate more files at all?
That was when we were invited to participate in this, that was by design.
Okay.
That it was, okay, we're going to come in, because if we're being invited to come in and assess a program, I'm not going to come in with 20 files and overload them on the first
Mhm.
one. So that was deliberate to come in. To your point, what's the capacity? Okay, we can do 4 and then move up from there.
And
I'll
I know-
stand here today and say I suggest 10 to 12. That could be higher
Okay.
as we move forward, but,
Okay.
right?
And obviously, it will depend on the complexity of the files too. So, but 10 to 12, that's good to know. My second question is, you mentioned on slide 8 a number of the files which were reviewed related to either historical complaints or cases where the survivor did not wish to proceed with investigation. I'm wondering if the review looked at the reasons why the survivor did not wish to proceed. Like, could there have been something in there that, as a learning point, like a service was not available, or things were not collected in an appropriate time, or something like that? Like, are there improvements along those lines that were picked up in this?
Not that I've seen to date. Certainly that's what we're looking for. That's that investigative step that's not a best practice that we would want to see and correct. By the most unanimous theme I've seen through it all is how the investigators deal with the survivor in a trauma-informed way. So to your second question, I haven't seen that because the feedback has been fairly consistent. I would expect to see that if that wasn't the case. if that answers your question.
It does, and that's reassuring to know. Like, I just wanted to know that this process is, or at least would pick up those situations where there is a fix that could have been done to possibly lead to a charge if it was warranted.
Which is
Which is
why
what
we've
you did.
chosen to participate
Yeah.
and have that independent review to find those things that we can do better. And if we fall down, how do we pick up and go forward in a more positive fashion?
Great. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Hinch.
So most of my questions were answered, but what if a survivor is afraid to go forward with a charge or a complaint? Would you be able to determine that, or?
Well, the investigators should be able to determine that in the interview stage,
Mhm.
in the front end of the investigation. Does the survivor want to participate in an interview? If there is safety concerns, then we go into safety planning. Is there a safety plan that works? Is it comfortable? But it's trauma informed, and we're going to take what we can get and really not force the survivor to do anything that they don't want to do. So it's kind of a delicate situation about how do we're not going to force anybody to move forward, and we're not going to force anybody to shut a file down.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner, or Vice Chair Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a couple questions and comments. If I recall, when we first put this issue before the board, and this would have, I think, been at the tail end of the last term of commissioner changes, it was a question of one process, and I think it was the Sunny Mariner process. Yeah, was determined not appropriate for our municipality. The alternative was to investigate the RCMP's approach. And it brings me back to, I know that I was just rereading the end result was to come back and give a recommendation of whether or not to continue, which of course and it is in the recommendation. But I also think that it was to evaluate the program in a way that would allow a determination of whether or not, now I could be way off on this, whether or not there was an interest in having some form of approach that was specifically at HRP, in HRP files. Am I wrong on that? Am I recalling that poorly? I don't know, because the reason why I'm asking is I want to ask specifically, you're recommending that we remain in that program, which I actually like, because it is it's taking advantage of an already developed program that appears to be worthwhile, and that you've now had 12 months in, and it's worthwhile to continue. But was it ever considered that HRP would assess that and determine whether or not it's better than another one that might be out there? Commissioner Mancini referenced that there are others out there. We've investigated one. It was not the choice, and it was not appropriate for a number of reasons. Chief can speak to that. This one is another one. Are you familiar with others that are out there, other processes, other ways to do this that could be successful? I guess that's where I'm going. Have we landed in the one that is the best from an HRP perspective?
I guess we've currently landed in the one that we're participating in. To your question, I'm sure there's others out there. I can't speak to them right now.
Yeah.
I think it's important to recognize that within the integrated CID environment,
Yeah.
when files get picked out, they don't pick them out because an integrated CID file of sexual assault that occurs in Cole Harbor could be very easily investigated by an HRP officer.
Yeah.
Right. So the distinction on, or vice versa, in terms of, an offense that occurs in Dartmouth could be investigated by an RCMP officer. That's insane. So in terms of, so I just want to be careful when we talk about
Yeah.
HRP files, that these are integrated
Okay,
CID files.
Okay, that's what's the missing link here for me of what were we intending to get out of that 12 months and what was being considered, what was the actual end experience, I guess. And that's now been for me conveyed. I'm happy to support this. Tremendously important. Having worked with women who are experiencing some form of violence through domestic violence, sexual violence through domestic violence. The underreported is there. As Commissioner Hinch had suggested, there are fear and safety concerns often with a victim that prevents them from wanting to proceed or even consider. But I know it's important as well that the charge is exclusively with the police. Am I right now with that one? Sexual violence, or I know domestic violence it is. It's not for sexual violence. Okay. So that would certainly be I think a barrier for people to get past is their fear of charge, of a charge being laid. I'm just pointing out those kinds of things that are being experienced. I'll leave it there. I think that we should continue this for sure. For my colleagues, I think that this is something that is it's a strength of the way and the place we are in delivering services from our police services. We had not done this before. I don't think, no. And so this is progress, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I think it's good progress to be here. If there are other models that should be brought forward, then so be it. And I look forward to seeing Commissioner Mancini's motion that he wants to consider. The last thing I'll leave it with, thank you very much for 30 plus years. Not only offering service, but offering service in the CID and
It's been my pleasure.
Well, it's certainly, when I hear about the work that you do, it's impressive. So I think you should know that others feel the same way as I do, value the work that you have done and hopefully will continue to do.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioners. Just before Commissioner Mancini puts his motion on the floor, maybe I could ask another, just point of clarification. On the feedback slide, first bullet, 2 of the 34 files were reopened. The next bullet I thought was quite interesting. It says a number of the files which were reviewed relate to historical complaints or cases where the survivor did not wish to proceed with the investigation. How many of the files of the 34 were in that category that were reviewed?
Where they're being closed with no charge, I would say the majority. There's a few where there's no evidence, but there's also the complaint and the survivor doesn't wish to go forward. So when you look at historical, a 30-year-old historical sexual assault, evidence is going to be very limited in what we would be able to or could be able to collect in that file, other than just the declaration by the survivor. And then there's 30 years, are all the people involved in the file still with us type thing.
I understand that. I guess my question is, it depends on what the program objectives are. If the program objective is to go back and look at cases to identify how could we improve things, modify, adopt new best practices, great. If the objective is to potentially identify cases that we missed something and then we truly want to reopen that case and bring a charge forward, if everyone's amenable to that process, those are different objectives. And when this statement here, a number of the files, I mean, is that 50% of them? Because right away, 17 of the 34 would have never gotten reopened if they were historical or people did not want to wish to move forward with the investigation. So I was just trying to understand how many that was, because I would assume then right away, none of those are going to get reopened. in that second bullet, that characterization.
Again, it's survivors' wishes and what evidence is there to be collected to substantiate a charge.
So is this a characterization after we picked the 34 files for review, or was this a characteristic that was used to select the 34
No,
files?
to that point, I
No.
think we have no say in what files get picked.
Right.
No say. It's totally a random. So we don't get to go in and cherry pick. Oh, let's take Becky's file or let's take Tony's file. We have no say in that. That is the RCMP reviewing committee folks
Understood.
that pick those. So you may get on one occasion, they may be all historical. I get just based on their
Right.
algorithm. Or you may get that none of them are historical based on their, because there's no parameters that go in terms of, because they don't strip files, because you wouldn't know until such time that you actually pick a file.
Yeah.
That is picked just basically on clearance, right? Like a
Right.
clearance algorithm in terms of
Mhm.
sexual assault.
Yeah.
Not charged.
Understood.
That
Okay.
feedback comes from post review by the reviewer,
Right.
not pre-selection criteria.
Okay, thank you for that clarity.
Okay.
Yeah, that helps. So after we reviewed these random 34 files, we found that
Correct.
a number of these were historical, they're too far back, nothing could potentially trigger them to be reopened, or these people don't want them reopened. Combination of the both. Okay, thank you for clarifying. Commissioner Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I wasn't here on the commission when it was decided to follow this model. Commissioner Kennedy alluded to that. I think 4 of the 6 of us were not here at the time, right? And I'd heard the reasons why they're choosing this model, and I questioned that because I'm not sure. I mean, even the Mass Casualty recommends the VACR is the policing model that should be used across Nova Scotia. I know there's complexities here because we're different, unique because we have both RCMP and HRP. But you know, for example, the choosing of files. My understanding of VACR, all files that there's no charges, they're all reviewed. Is my understanding, and they also have subject matter experts. They also have people with lived experience as part of that reviewing process. So I don't know if this is the right model. I truly don't. And it concerns me because, again, I go back to what I meant earlier. The fact that there were very few recommendations out of the files that were reviewed is concerning to me. And so, you know, I don't know. I don't know if I can support the motion that's on the floor. And I also asked Mr. Chair, you know, maybe it's time, since there's 4 out of the 6 of us were not here when that happened before, that we can maybe ask the folks from that lead the VACR process to come and do a presentation here at the Board of Police Commission for further discussion. In the meantime, we carry on with the model the superintendent and his team is doing. I just think there's more education that is needed. I've been fortunate to have an opportunity to walk through how the model walked through a couple times for me. And that's been very educational. I'm trying to compare it to the model that you're sharing with me. And I see some major differences. And so this is really, really important stuff. And my motion that I have, I think from a procedure point of view, Chris, I think I'll have to come on after we vote on this motion. And my motion is about policy and making sure that as part of the board's work plan, that we include an element that has to do with sexual assault. So just plant the seed. That's what my motion will be after we deal with this one. So my ask is that we can have the VACR come in and do a presentation to the board so we can understand that, so we can continue to ask questions. I think allow police to continue to do the review from the SAIR, but so that when we do come back and have this conversation, we're better educated. For me right now, I don't know if this is the right model, so I won't be voting in favor of it, but I'll follow the wish of the board. Thank you.
Vice Chair Kent, did you? Oh,
Okay, thank you. I think that I just want to remind those members who have not been here, we did go through a very thorough, several times, having reports in. We had Sunday Mariner in. We had acknowledgement that, Chief, you can speak to some of the implications of why we didn't choose it. I think it had to do with access to files. And the Sunday Mariner one is sorry, the VACR one, I should reference it that way. There were just very sort of significant barriers as to why it didn't go forward. And I do recall as well the chief expressing that there were, Sunny Mariner was very engaged with the team that was reviewing it at HRP, and that at the end of the day, the board did choose not to do it. I don't think there's any harm if councillor or commissioner thinks that that's something that would be worth having a review on with this board. I think that's a fair approach to it, but just to, again, maybe it'd be worthwhile checking it in on some reports that had already come in, and that would give you some insight before we if we were to go down that route. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are we ready for the question? All those in favor of the motion? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Motion carried.
Opposed? I didn't.
Yep.
I'll make sure I recorded for that. Yeah.
Thank you. And Commissioner Mancini, is there a motion that you would like to introduce?
There is. Thank you very much. And thank
Yeah.
you for that discussion. Superintendent, thank you very much for your work. I appreciate it, sir. Truly do. I would like to put the following motion on the floor, that the Board of Police Commissioners for the Halifax Regional Municipality request that the Commissioner of Public Safety include the development of a board policy on sexual assault case review in the board's 26-27 work plan. So moved. Thank you, Commissioner Kent. So again, I think we need to have this front and center in our language and our conversations as the role of the Board of Police Commission, and creating some policy around this so that it's part of our work plan. Unfortunately, we continue to see the numbers of sexual
Sorry,
assault.
Commissioner, may I deal with an administrative issue about notice of motion and get a motion passed to waive the notice of motion
Oh,
for your
okay.
motion?
Sure. So again, just going back, we do have to, in order to put the motion on, so that we don't have to go through the process
Okay.
of bringing the motion forward. So we do have to have the 2/3 vote amongst the commissioners, in order to have the notice of motion, or have the motion brought now so that it can be debated and can go forward. So the question can be asked by the chair, but it is a 2/3 vote to do so.
Madam Clerk, are we able to put the motion that's now been presented up on the screen?
So Chair, I have it with the waiving the requirement for notice of motion, and then a second part with Commissioner Mancini's full motion.
So do we vote on it together, or you vote one at a time?
We can vote on part one first if
Okay.
you wish. Yes.
All right. So do we need somebody to read item number 1 in
So,
as
yeah, I
motion?
can read number 1 then.
Okay, thank you,
That
Commissioner.
waive the rules of order for section 45, subsection 1 of Administrative Policy 1, respecting the procedures of the Board of Police regarding notice of motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Mancini, and thank you, Vice Chair Kent, for seconding the motion. Is there any discussion or debate on the motion, or we'll just vote on the motion? Call for the question. All those in favor? Unanimous. The motion's been passed. So now do you want to officially read in
Yeah.
the second part of the
I'll read the
motion?
second part officially. Thank you very much. That the Board of Police Commissioners for the Halifax Regional Municipality request the Commissioner of Public Safety include the development of a board policy on sexual assault case review in Board's 26-27 work plan. So moved. Yeah. So again, very quickly, we need to keep this front and center, the importance of this. And I think by having it as part of our work plan, we can make sure it continues to be a high priority that it is being shown. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Mancini. Would any other commissioners like to speak to the motion? Commissioner Bezic-Escalard.
Thanks, sir. Thanks, Councilor Mancini, for Commissioner Mancini for bringing this forward. Just in the time that we've been discussing, I did Google to check what had been discussed on the table in the board before about the VACR and what Sunny Manor brought Sunny Mariner's presentation to the board. I personally, as a new board member, would really welcome the opportunity to have a more fulsome look at this and to know that, to say hand on heart that the model that we end up going with is truly the most appropriate model. So thank you for the motion, and I think this is an appropriate way to do this in the work plan. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this
Yes, thank you.
particular? Commissioner
I just want
Akadosha?
to agree because I think in the past was just myself and Vice Chair on the board when we went through all this. And there's nothing wrong with renewing our hearts and minds with, what's available. So as proposing that it goes as part of our strategy plan will be a great thing to update new members as well, so we carry ourselves on. So good idea.
Any other comments?
Yeah, yes, I do.
Vice Chair Kent?
Can you put that up again for me? I feel like the motion is different than asking for the presentation, and do we need both, or it is inclusive? Right, that's what I'm thinking. The education piece
Yeah.
will probably come out in some of this.
I don't
and
think we
can-
need a motion to, I mean, I can understand there's consensus here, and we can just bring that for the agenda
Okay,
review
all right.
and organize that.
Okay, good enough. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure I hadn't missed something on that. Yeah, thank you.
All right, barring none, call for the question. All those in favor? Motion carried, unanimous. All right, I think that's all of 10.3.2. And we will carry forward the suggestion to bring the item for a future presentation to the agenda committee. All right, let's, I know we missed our break, but I know that some members have some things to do, so we're going to charge right through it. All right, so we're going to go to 10.3.4, formal adoption of the Board of Police Commissioners policy on, oh, sorry, I jumped my page. 10.3.3, formal adoption of the BOPC policy on use of force. So first I would ask that a commissioner place the motion on the floor. Commissioner Bezic-Escanlar, would you like to read the motion in, please?
Thank you, Chair. I would, if I can get it onto the screen, please. Thank you. So move that the Board of Police Commissioners for Halifax Regional Municipality formally adopt the policy entitled Use of Force as set forth in Attachment 1 of the staff report dated February 18th, 2026 for inclusion in the Board of Police Commissioners Policy Manual, and to request the Chief of HRP and the Chief Superintendent HRD present to the Board on their approach to include race-based data in future use of force reporting. So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Bezic-Escanlar, and thank you, Commissioner Hinch, for seconding the motion. Any questions, concerns, statements on the motion? The new policy? Perhaps Mr. Bates, if you'd like to give the board a brief overview. There's been a lot of hard work and a lot of collaboration, I know, done on this, and perhaps you can walk us through and highlight some of that.
Sure. Thank you, Chair. Josh Bates, Policing Policy Strategist. So use of force policy, which was developed in collaboration, which the Chair referenced, with Commissioners Beswick-Escanlar and Carter, along with HRP and HRD, was first considered by the board at our December meeting, where it was adopted in principle, pending a period of public feedback, as has been the practice of this board. Following that meeting, the proposed policy was posted online for public feedback. And in response to that feedback, several amendments are proposed. These are outlined in your package, but I'll briefly summarize them here. In response to concerns about the use of chokeholds, staff are recommending that the board's position on chokeholds, respiratory restraints, and the use of the knee on the neck, specifically that they should not be taught, trained, or endorsed by HRP, be included in the mission, vision, and values section. To be clear, none of these tactics are currently taught, trained, or endorsed by the HRP, but staff appreciate that there is still value in the board clearly articulating this position. Staff are also recommending that the word regular replace periodic in clause 13 to better convey that trainings to take place in defined intervals. Clauses 10 and 15 have been amended to clarify that non-certified methods, equipment, or weapons may only be used when sworn members fear death or grievous bodily harm, and when approved methods, equipment, and weapons are not feasible. And clause 21 has been amended to clarify that any use of force that meets the definition of a matter of immediate strategic significance triggers the notification requirements as outlined in the board's policy on this topic. There are also recommended changes related to the policy's reporting requirements. The proposed policy now requires the chief to break down use of force incidents by age, gender, whether a weapon was found, and the officer's perception of exhibited influences on the subject's behavior. And finally, the proposed policy has been amended to include a clause requiring the reporting of race-based data on use of force. HRP and HRD have been doing considerable work on this file, including ensuring alignment with other race-based data initiatives led by the CACP, Stats Canada, and the RCMP at the national level. However, further work is required in areas such as community engagement and data analysis before HRP and HRD are in a position to collect and report race-based data on police stops, including use of force incidents. The staff are therefore recommending that as a first step toward meeting the race-based reporting requirements outlined in the policy, the board request a presentation from HRP and HRD on their approach to include race-based data in future use of force reporting. I'd be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bates. Are there any questions for Mr. Bates in relation to the draft policy and the updates to the policy that's been proposed for today? Barring no questions, we'll call for the motion for formal adoption of the policy. All those in favor? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to 10.3.5 HRP. Oh, sorry, I keep jumping down the list. 10.3.4 formal adoption of the Board of Police Commissioners policy on code of conduct complaints. May I ask that a commissioner read the motion? Thank you, Vice Chair Kent.
Thank you. I move that the Board of Police Commissioners for the Halifax Regional Municipality adopt the policy entitled Code of Conduct Complaints regarding a member of the Board of Police Commissioners for inclusion in the Board of Police Commissioners Policy Manual as outlined in Attachment 1 of the staff report dated February 6, 2026.
Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Commissioner Hinch. Madam Clerk, would you like to share some comments on the proposed changes and adoption of this
Yes.
policy?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So at the board's January 14th meeting, the board adopted in principle a new board policy entitled Code of Conduct Complaints regarding a member of the Board of Police Commissioners. Now, this policy outlined the code of conduct that was expected of commissioners, as is set out in the Police Act regulations, and it also detailed the process that would be used for the submission and the consideration of any code of conduct complaints. So the final adoption of this policy was subject to a period of public feedback. And I can confirm that the policy was posted on the board's website for a 2-week period ending on January 30th, 2026, which is consistent with the board's policy review process. And I can confirm that there was no comments received on the code of conduct policy by the public at that time. So there have been no modifications to the policy that the board adopted in principle in January.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any questions or clarification?
Question?
Call for the question, or the question has been called. Thank you. All those in favor? Motion carried. All right. Now we will move on to 10.3.5.
I'll put it on.
I think we're getting a presentation first,
Oh, we're getting a
Virginia,
presentation?
and then we'll,
Oh.
she's looking to put on.
We actually need a motion first to accept the information report and presentation, please.
Okay, there we go.
Okay.
Virginia.
I move that the Board of Police Commissioners for Halifax Regional Municipality receive the staff report dated February 13th, 2026, and accompanying staff presentation as information.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Commissioner Bezic-Escalar, for seconding that. All right, so Chief McLean and Chief Superintendent Duff. Oh, sorry, we have to call for the question first before the presentation. All those in favor of the question? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you kindly. Over to our chiefs for the presentation.
My apologies, Chair. Thank you very much. I know how to work a fax machine quite well, so. And- I'm gonna run for office on the platform of bringing back the rotary dial, so. Anyhow, we'll get started right away. Of course, myself and Chief McLean are going to do this as a shared presentation. Information in this presentation covers a 6-month period of calls for service from July 1st, 2025 to December 31st, 2025. Joint semi-annual crime statistics report prepared by HRP and HRD. The next report will cover the period of January 1st, 2026 to June 30th, 2026.
Yes, so calls for service are broken down into 3 types as we go forward to this. Public generated calls for service, which include calls to the police from members of the public, business organization, partner agencies. Basically, if you pick up the phone and call the police for some reason to get their service. Proactive calls, which include foot patrols, traffic stops, and proactive assignments, could be checking on an individual subject to bail conditions or a high visibility patrol in an area. And then thirdly, online reports, which include certain non-emergency crimes or incidents which are reported through the online reporting form.
So the total calls for service within HRM for this reporting period were 95,198. Public generated calls accounted for 61,345, proactive of 29,478, and 4,375 online reports. Overall, a 6% total increase when compared to the same reporting period last year.
So as we break that down what we will give you is an overall piece of HRM, and then we will break it down within our respective agencies so you can have a sense of what that looks like. So for Halifax Regional Police, the total calls in that period of time were just over 63,000, of which 47,000 were publicly generated. Proactive calls accounted for just under 12,000 and over 4,000 online reports, which represents an 8% increase when compared to the same period last year.
Within HRD, total calls for service were 31,927, public generated calls of 14,164, proactive of 17,635, online reports of 128. So we saw a 4% increase over the same period last year.
As you'll see from this list, the top 10 public generated call types, and this remains somewhat similar over time, but assist citizens, unwanted persons, driving complaints, suspicious persons, motor vehicle accidents, property damage, assist other agencies, theft, false alarms, well-being checks, and noise complaints. It's estimated that roughly 50 to 80% of the calls we respond to are non-criminal in nature, which you can see from this list. From an HRP perspective, theft and other criminal code would actually relate to specific direct criminal matters. Are they in order or just random? They're in order. Yeah, they're in order. Yeah. Part. I'm sure they have them somewhere, but they're not contained in this particular.
Would have been
report.
nice if they were actually. But that.
Okay, moving on to HRD. Top 10 reported are listed, with number 1 being the driving complaint. Assist citizen, motor vehicle accident, property damage, assist other agency, false commercial alarms, other criminal code, disputes, verbal, suspicious person, well-being check, and false alarm residentials. So crime types, the select violations, crimes against persons refer to a crime where a person is the primary target. Example, homicide, attempt homicide, assault, sexual assault, robbery. Crimes against property refers to a crime where the primary target is a property. Break and enter, theft, fraud, and similar. Other criminal code matters refer to the other types of crime: drug offenses, criminal traffic violations, offensive weapons, bail violations, and other types of conditions that are breached.
So we'll talk about crimes against the persons. From an HRM perspective, we've seen a 4% overall increase. You can see the numbers, so I'm not going to read them off to you. There were 2 less homicides in HRM over that period of time, which is a decrease of 33%. There were 4 more incidents of attempted homicide, which is an increase of 57%. When you're talking about such low numbers, though, fluctuations can look a lot. The percentage numbers are going to fluctuate significantly when you're talking about low numbers of events. Sexual violations decreased by 31 incidents, or 11%. There was an increase in assaults of 139, or 8%. The majority of it occurred within HRP, largely within Central Division. And there's been an increase in youth assaults, with 52 incidents of assault involving a youth offender in 24 and 74 in 2025. Robbery decreased by 14 incidents, or 9%. From HRP's perspective, breaking that down, the same thing, a 5% overall increase, going from 1,600 to 1,700. Overall crimes against persons has increased by 5%. The number of homicide incidents decreased by 2. Attempted homicides decreased by 1. There was a 3% decrease in sexual violations, but refers to 6 incidents. And assaults increased by 116 incidents, 9%. I've already spoken to that earlier. And robberies were down 15%, or 21 incidents. If we take a closer look at the homicides and sexual violations, we'll see that between July and December 31st, there were 2 homicides in 2025. Both homicides occurred in downtown Halifax. Neither homicide involved firearms. Charges have been laid with both homicide investigations. Sexual violations are down 3%. There were 6 fewer incidents in the second half of 2025. Top offenses include sexual assault and sexual interference, and the highest number of reported incidents took place in Central Division.
Okay, for HRD, in respect to crimes against persons, overall there was an increase in crimes against person incidents by 2%. No change in the number of homicides. Attempted homicides increased by 3 incidents. Sexual violations decreased by 25 incidents, which equates to 28%. Assault increased by 6%, or 23 incidents, and robbery increased by 7 incidents, or 47%. If we take a closer look at assaults and sexual violations, there were 23 additional assaults reported in the last 6 months of the year. The highest number of reported incidents took place in Lower Sackville. For sexual violations, 25 fewer incidents is reported in the second half of 2025. Top offenses included sexual assault and non-consensual distribution of images. More than half of the events took place in Lower Sackville. Now, in respect to crimes against property for the HRM, overall, shoplifting, there was a decrease of 4%, or 183 incidents. Fraud was up 6%, or 65 incidences. Break and enter, all types decreased by 49 incidents, which translates to 9%. Theft of motor vehicle increased by 11 incidents, which is 4%. Theft over $5,000, increase of 7 incidents. Theft under 5,000 decreased by 330 incidents, which accounts for 11% decrease. Theft from motor vehicle increased by 250 incidents, or an increase of 26%. Possession of trafficking stolen goods decreased by 322 incidents, which translates to 27%.
So for crimes against property from a HRP perspective, the increase is statistically insignificant in terms of 0.06 increase in crimes against property. Shoplifting decreased by 4 incidents. Fraud increased by 63 incidents, 7%. Break and enters decreased by 64 incidents of 15%. There was an increase in theft of motor vehicles of 11%, but relates to 20 incidents. And theft over 5,000 increased by 7 incidents, or 13%. Theft under 5,000 basically remained stagnant with a 5 incident increase. And theft from motor vehicles increased a significant 32% at 264 incidents. And stolen goods decreased by 26%, 281. From a crimes against property perspective, if we take a closer look, the increase in fraud incidents in HRM largely occurred in HRP jurisdiction. I probably would have spoken to some of these earlier at different points of the year. The 3 main scams were involved. One was the energy efficiency scam, where people target people looking to install heating and cooling devices in their homes. The renovation and repair scam, which involves an individual approaching mainly seniors at their homes and offering to complete small renovations. There was a suspect arrested back in September and charged with 15 counts of fraud over 5,000. And then just generally senior scams in general, involving an individual pretending to be a family member who needed bail money. There was a suspect arrested in November and charged with fraud over 5,000 and 4 counts of fraud under 5,000. We have and will continue to do communications in relation to that effect when it comes to these type of frauds and scams. As we say, the police or justice participants will never call you or come to your home looking for bail money if someone is involved. So that message has to keep getting out there. And the increase in thefts from motor vehicles largely occurred in HRP jurisdiction, with the largest increase being felt in Dartmouth. And we've been engaged in various proactive assignments to address those issues, including theft from motor vehicles.
In respect to HRD, overall, we've seen a 34% decrease in crimes against property. Shoplifting, 179 incidents less, which translates to 57%. A couple of incidents more in fraud, translates to 1%. Break and enter increased by 15 incidents. Theft of motor vehicle decreased by 9, or 12%. There was no change in the number of incidents involving theft over $5,000. Theft under 5,000 decreased by 325 incidents. Theft from motor vehicles decreased by 14 incidents, and possession of stolen goods decreased by 41 incidents, which was 41%. For theft under 5,000, 325 fewer incidents reported in HRD jurisdiction in the same period last year. And for theft from motor vehicle, although overall incident counts are decreasing in RCMP HRD, thefts from motor vehicles in Lower Sackville increased by 16% compared to last year. More than half the thefts from motor vehicles were reported within the Lower Sackville area. Moving on to other criminal code.
So other criminal code involves those type of offenses which are not categorized under persons or property, including arson, bail violations, drug offenses, offensive weapons. What we'll see is that the overall total other criminal code for HRM in its whole remained pretty similar to the previous year, showing a decrease of 7. From 22-26 to 22-19, arson increased by 4 incidents. Bail violations decreased by 20 incidents, but is 1% for the overall number. Drug enforcement offenses increased by 4 incidents to 2%, and offensive weapons increased by 6 incidents. From an HRP perspective, the arson increased by 5 incidents. 10 of the incidents occurred in East Division, 9 occurred in West, and 6 occurred in Central Division. Bail violations decreased by 39 incidents. Drug offenses increased by 12 incidents or 12%, which is mainly enforcement driven, and offensive weapons increased by 21 incidents of 10%.
For HRD in respect to other criminal code, arson decreased by 1 incident, which was 6%. Bail violations increased by 19 or 6%, so from 323 to 342. Drug offenses decreased by 8 incidents, and offensive weapons decreased by 15 incidents or 18%. So it's nice to see a little decrease in that area. In respect to shooting incidents within HRM, general federal crimes is a subset of the overall OCC category and includes the Firearms Act. In the second half of 2025, there were 12 shooting incidents within the municipality, a decrease of 4 incidents or 25% when compared to the same reporting period as last year. Firearm-related homicides within HRM between July 1st, 2025 and December 31st, 2025, there was 1 firearm-related homicide in the municipality. This incident occurred in RCMP HRD jurisdiction.
For firearms seized or surrendered in HRM over this period between July 25 and the end of 25, there were a total of 547 firearms seized or surrendered in HRM. There were 242 firearms seized or surrendered in HRP jurisdiction, and 305 firearms seized or surrendered in RCMP jurisdiction. This represents an increase of 9% when compared with the same period in 2004. In 2024, what I can tell you from HRP's perspective, for the year, last year, we had 156 firearms actually turned into us, where we actually went out and got them. The total in HRM was over 330, if you included the RCMP. So when people say getting guns from people is no business, it's not. We do it all the time. From a crime distribution by policing district, what we'll see, as you're aware, obviously HRM operates under the integrated policing model provided by both HRP and RCMP. As we well know, it's a unique model across Canada. Obviously the CID division is fully integrated, as well as some in court section records. We have 3 geographical patrol divisions within HRP: Central, which is Peninsula of Halifax; East Division, Dartmouth, where we're at right now; and West Division, which is Bedford to the Sandal Loop. The RCMP district has 6 geographical patrol divisions: Lower Sackville, Cole Harbour, Tantallon, Musquodoboit Harbour, Sheet Harbour, and North Central. This slide shows you the crime distribution by policing district for all of HRM. Is what you'll see is 36% is in the Central Division, 25% in East Division, 21% in West Division, and then as it gets broken down, Lower Sackville at 6%, Cole Harbour at almost 5%, Tantallon just over 3%, Musquodoboit Harbour at 1.4%, and Sheet Harbour under 1%. And North Central also under 1%. This graph breaks down the estimated population and select criminal violation totals in rate per 100,000 population within HRM. I won't read the numbers for you, but obviously they're there for you to see if you want to make any comparative analysis.
This next shows the rate per 100,000 population, just a little bit more of a visual of criminal violations.
And I think, it's always mindful when we have this conversation, that it came up with council in terms of, we talk about cop per pop ratios and all those other things, is that populations don't necessarily determine where people are. Urban, rural environments, downtown, it is driven by different factors. So something we have to be mindful of. And I think it's not necessarily, it doesn't really provide much context in terms of trying to divide out cop per pop analysis without doing the entirety of the municipality, which would be done in every other jurisdiction across the country. This slide shows the total number of crimes against persons and property and criminal code matters for the last 6 months of last year by HRP division. As you can see, they were broken down. crimes against persons, Central, East, and West Division in that order in terms of, so Central and East are pretty close. Crimes against property in Central Division lead the pack. And as you can see, the other no's in terms of, so 43% of the total is in Central, 31% in East, and 25% in West Division.
Okay, in respect to the RCMP, again, it's just the chart that's breaking down the crime types by physical location. Total number of crimes against person, crimes against property, and other criminal code matters, again, for the same time from July 1st to December 31st. And of course, there might be the odd number there where the final location hasn't been determined as of yet. So traffic and collisions, which is always a topic at our community engagement sessions for sure. So within HRM, the slide shows the overall traffic statistics. That slide does for HRM and offers a comparison with the same period of the previous year. Motor vehicle accidents increased by 5%, which accounted for 193 more incidents. Injuries related to motor vehicle accidents decreased by 37 incidents. There were 4 additional fatalities as a result of a motor vehicle accident. The number of tickets issued under the Motor Vehicle Act decreased by 5%, or 371, and impaired driving decreased by 107 incidents, which is 16%.
From the HRP perspective, the number of motor vehicle accidents increased by 5%, which is an increase of 138 incidents. Injuries related to motor vehicle accidents, however, decreased by 18%, or 68 incidents. There was no change in the number of fatality accidents of 3, and as well, the number of tickets issued under the Motor Vehicle Act decreased by 17%, which speaks to part of our commitment back to the traffic unit and things I spoke of earlier about roadside checkpoints. And impaired driving decreased by 33 incidents, or 9%.
In HRD jurisdiction, motor vehicle accidents increased by 55 incidents, which was 6%. Injuries related to the motor vehicle accidents increased by 31 incidents, or 19%. 4 additional fatalities as a result of motor vehicle collisions. The number of tickets issued under the Motor Vehicle Act increased by 367, or 13% increase, and impaired driving decreased by 74 incidents, or 24%. So we'd be happy now to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Chiefs. Any questions, Commissioner Akindoju?
Well, I just want to say thank you, but I mean, so much data to contemplate with, and I'm so confused. But I don't know how we could deliberate on this. I've been scrolling up and down, but if I take you back to, I think it's the 4th slide where I asked, is this in order of, was this in any order? So it will be the top 10 public generated calls. I'm surprised that you have unwanted person, which I want to understand what that means. And with HRP, it does not even occur. So my first question will be, what is the unwanted person? And I try to drill down. It might have, maybe you probably have another word for that. Unwanted person would be breakthrough homes or breakthrough.
No. Unwanted persons would be a call type where someone basically calls the police to say, I don't want Bill Moore here. Like whether either in a residence, in a business, in a bar, like like any place that people have an unwanted person is about as simply named as it could possibly in terms of a call type where someone is that someone is calling the police there because they don't want that person there anymore.
Okay, and my surprise will be that with the HRP it doesn't exist at all.
RCMP territory?
Yes, please.
Well, I would guess maybe that's because the number of businesses and that occur in the urban environment
Okay.
as compared to, I'm guessing a lot more people are going to be asked to leave malls or business or bars than there are individual homes where people are residential. Like that's probably the rationale behind why that would be. I mean, I've never called the police to have someone leave from my house, not saying that, it doesn't happen sometimes, but the majority of these things are usually places of business.
Okay, I only have 3 questions. The second question will be the theft of motor vehicle by RCMP went up by 16%, but you just told us the crime went up by 16%. I don't know what was done with it. Were they caught? Were they not caught? What's the cause for this increase? I'm surprised that we're having theft of motor vehicle grow year over year by 16%.
So through the chair to the commissioner, sorry, you're
You're
speaking
probably as
specific-
confused as I am with so many of those. I agree with you 100%. There's so many pages to scroll through.
Yes, you're asking specifically about theft of motor vehicles?
Correct.
Um,
You said it went up by 16% year over year. Or did I hear that from? But I think it was you.
It would have been
I
the
think
same,
it's compared to the
same
same
reporting
period
period,
the
same
year
6
before.
months.
Okay.
Actually, their theft of motor vehicles went down 12%.
But without CMP went up by 16%.
No.
No.
Okay. Is that no? I think I wrote it down. It must be yes.
It's 12%, but it's 9 incidents for the RCMP. For us, theft of motor vehicles went up 11%, which relates to 20 incidents. Theft of motor vehicles.
Sure.
Someone stealing someone's car.
Yeah, I agree. 11%. I want to go by percentage, not by number.
Yeah.
Yeah, theft of motor vehicle within HRD's area decreased by 12%.
Okay, it was decreased. Sorry, then I thought I had 16% increase. So I'll go to page 32 or 31 in between. Halifax Regional Police stroke crimes distribution by police district. That's very interesting. I always wonder that Central will be downtown and XYZ, that you sort of deploy a lot more around that area. But if you look at crimes against persons, Central is 676, Eastern is 668, and Western is 460. For me, crime against persons should be weighted higher than crime against property, and I might be wrong.
It is actually in the criminal severity index in terms of, this is just straight numbers in terms of
Correct.
numbers. But when you talk about the crime severity index, which is this Stats Canada place on what your crime rate is, for lack of a better word, they put more weight on crimes against persons than they do crimes against property. And then within even crimes against persons, a homicide is rated much higher than a simple assault.
Well, you see, like I said, I had so many questions. The word attempted homicide?
Yeah.
What's attempted homicide? Did he eventually lead to homicide or not?
No, attempted homicide.
He's tried to shoot?
Could be shoot, could be stab, it could be any means of doing it, but it becomes an actual sort of legal test in terms of that there was an indication that this person intended to end the life of the person of which.
Is it different from an assault?
Well, it would be a higher level. So I come over and push you, it's an assault.
Okay.
If I beat you over the head with a hammer, it's getting to assault with a weapon, or up to aggravated assault if it's very serious. Attempted homicide would be to the point where I actually try to end your life. And those are distinctions within law, and can get caught up in what the charges may potentially be.
But not to distract you, that chart is very important to me, where you gave us the crime against persons versus the crime against property. I think the allocation of men and women of armed forces will be more around crime against person. Am I right? Rather than crime against property.
It's
Or what's the strategy here?
It depends, like, because you know, like I said, so there's a distinction between crimes against persons in terms of, but also as we see, the number of crimes against property are significantly higher in Central Division, which is the downtown area, in terms of where the businesses are, where folks, you know, experiencing, you know, social issues tend to congregate. A whole bunch of reasons for that in terms of that's, you know, the shopliftings, and, you know, when you talk about the shoplifting calls and that sort of stuff in retail areas, business areas that, you know, you see the Spring Garden Road people show up for and that sort of thing. Like there's a, you know, there's a bit of a collection where that thing occurs. You know, so crimes against persons, which can be a number of things. It could be a simple assault, and it could be a higher level event in terms of you know, right up to homicide. But the deployment of police resources in terms of, you know, which we base kind of on call volume and where people are in terms of, I can't put everyone downtown and leave nobody in Dartmouth.
Yeah.
Commissioner Mancini.
The only reason why I asked this, Chief, is because everything is about your strategy would be mainly about preventive, not proactive or not reactive. And in terms of preventing crime is bringing policemen to be visible in areas where we think there are higher probability of creating crimes. So that's why I'm trying to say, does this impact sort of allocation of people? I would assume Eastern Division will mean area like Clayton Park.
East Division? East Division is where we're at right now. East Division is all of
Which
Dartmouth.
one is Central?
Central is downtown Halifax, the peninsula.
Which one is Clayton Park and
West Division?
West, okay. Because that's where I think we see less of presence of men and women.
Well, I mean, again, there's lots, you know, West Division is also our largest division by size volume, stretching from the Sambro Loop up to the end of Bedford and going. So it's the largest division in terms of area of geography, but it's the area where it actually has the least number of calls in terms. So a lot of things go in factoring around resource deployment in terms, but I think it speaks back to your initial point about why staffing and retention and all those stuff in terms of it becomes very important. And we see maybe one of the first or two slides where we talked about proactive activity in terms of which is that activity which is more driven by police officer decision making, traffic stops, stop and walks, that sort of, that it is driven by simply you pick up the phone and call the police, right? Which is driven by that's the big chunk of our calls is someone picks up the phone and or whatever they use now in terms and contacts us in some manner for us to come deal with the problem.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other, Commissioner Bezic-Escalera?
Thanks, Chair. Thank you both for the report. As Commissioner Akindoji said, there's a lot of data to go through. Things that stood out to me, I'm always astounded by the number of calls. It's, you know, in the thousands and just speaks to the workload that both of your teams have. And the 6% increase in calls compared to last year, I think is greater than our population increase. So it just speaks to the workload that both your teams are taking. So just thank you for all the effort there. I'd like to ask, I have two batches of questions. I might be able to start with the first batch, is about the root causes. So a lot of data that makes me wonder is, can we relate any of this to root causes in your opinion? Like, for example, crimes amongst those already on conditions, people who are already in the system. You know, we hear a lot about the need for bail reform and stuff like that. And you mentioned that bail violations are down by 1%. So it seems like that's less of an issue in this case. I think about poverty. You mentioned the decrease in shoplifting by 5%, a big drop in possession and trafficking of stolen goods, which you would think would be part of what those in poverty may resort to. But you also see an increase in theft from motor vehicles by about the same, about 25%. Thinking of addictions as a root cause, there was a small increase in drug offenses by 2%. So it doesn't sound like that is much of a factor.
Just we have to be clear when we come to this type. These are sometimes enforcement driven rather than, you know, so people that have drug dependency issues aren't automatically a call, like in terms of, you know, so it has more to do with enforcement than it is just the fact that, you know, that exists in the community.
Yeah.
So we always, you know, we always have to be careful when we talk number. I mean, they are what they are. They give you a bit of a snapshot. And when you talk about, when you talk about, root causes and things, like I would say, so bail is an issue in terms of, because we also see, there was a time in my policing career and with Bill's in terms of we had a philosophy where there were certain folks that used to say, give them a life sentence, basically a weekend at a time, in terms of, they were causing lots of harms and doing all this other stuff, right?
Mhm.
Then it got up to, and COVID hit us in terms of some of those other things. And they didn't want people incarcerated anymore. And then Nova Scotia is historically high on its pre-sentence population within prisons in terms of trying to reduce the number of folks that are in prison that allows them to remain in the community, some of whom still commit an inordinate amount of offenses, right? And I think that's where part of the frustration comes in when you talk about, so putting everyone in jail is not the answer. Like it's just not for a whole bunch of reasons. Certainly from the fact that it's very costly, it's, there's no capacity for it, like all these other things, right? And should you be in jail because you're stealing, minor stuff all the time, right? But the flip side to it is also, you've seen because of, a place to move people out, that you're starting to see some people with, violent type offenses that have been getting, and it's been driven a lot, the Ontario model stuff where, when they got into that whole place around, the carjackings and all this other stuff, right? And people being released and doing some significant crime. So there has to be that sweet spot found in terms, and so there's a new bill before the federal government now. I think it's C-212 something. I never remember those numbers, but that talks about, bail reform for, violent offenses, gun offenses, that sort of stuff. And in terms of, but, retail communities also see that, people, they steal from me at 10 o'clock, get arrested, right?
Mm-hmm.
They steal from me again at 5 o'clock,
Mhm.
right? And in terms of, and there are some challenges that, if we try to work our way through that. And then when people talk about an investment in the criminal justice system, like it's not just giving more police is good to one degree because it talks about visibility and deterrence and all those other stuff, right? But you also have to make sure that you have enough crowns to deal with them, that you have enough legal aid lawyers to defend them, like that. Like it's a whole of system answer, not just one particular area. And we talk about in drug courts and all those other things that they're important things. I think that as we move forward, so there's no easy answer to it, but you would know as well as I do, and probably better in terms, there are social determinants that lead to, involvement within criminal lifestyles, right? In terms of, and the better we do on those, hopefully it gets to impact some of those. But we also know there is a relatively small number, I say relatively, but a relatively small number of folk who contribute exponentially to the amount of crime that we see in our communities.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. That's super helpful context, Chief, about pre to rule and that 80% of your crime is like 20% or less of your people and stuff. I guess that pretty much answers my question and addresses my understanding there. That so even though the bail violations down was 1%, that's not the determining, or that's not the metric to speak to the issue about bail reform. Is
because we have programs, Operation Breach in terms of so you're on conditions that would go. Then it got to the point where we had we try to leave that now to those people that are causing the most amount of mayhem in terms of and some of the other approaches which are beyond just, so it's like electronic monitoring, some of these other things that can actually come into place that are not so resource resistant on knocking on, making sure someone's home at 3 o'clock in the morning every night. And some of those other things, right? But we'll continue to do that. But then you talk about, it speaks to the part of like the staffing piece in terms of all this other stuff. So if you're doing that on that, you're not stopping cars, you're not, so it all, it's all interconnected, right?
Maybe I'll stop it. Thank you. I'll stop there in case anyone has questions, and I have more questions. So.
Commissioner Mancini.
Yeah, very quickly, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I saw your list of infractions, the noise complaints, you know, were on that. I think of things like we had the presentation of micro ability. We talk about traffic all the time. We talk about special events and having to use officer special events. So I'm looking at Commissioner Moore. When the police review conversations were happening, the idea of special constables, is there any updates on that? Because I look at, if there's a way that we can alleviate the volume for both police forces to work on things, other things, that would be a positive.
Good chair through to the commissioner. As a matter of fact, I had a call this morning, 8:30, to discuss that with the
good.
Department of Justice. So the Department of Justice does have, or is in the process of creating a framework for training, outlining duties for special constable programming. So, actually Roddy McDonald mentioned it. We had a meeting last week along those lines as well. And I had a meeting last week as well with transit in relation to transit safety and the like. So once the province formally releases that framework, that will then allow us to try to put in what is missing in which is the appropriate parts and how is it going to go together. So it is underway. We're just waiting on some of the legislative and the framework come from the province, and the internal discussions have already started internally within kind of my constellation of business units.
Well, that's great news. I mean, you know what I'm going to ask next. Is there any indication of a time frame?
Soon is what I was. So I think a lot of that work is done.
Okay.
I was asking again because what I said is that what I would like to be in a position to be is for the next budget cycle, if there's going to be something, a pilot or something in that we're in that space. And the other thing I would say too, there has been some discussions around the either elevating some of our present either bylaw or compliance or whatever into that space.
Yeah.
And I just think we just need to be careful as we go that we make sure that the individuals going into those spaces have the appropriate training and the skill sets
Absolutely.
and the like. It's not as simple as just simply saying, oh, congratulations, here's your new equipment and your
No, of
new
course not.
and your new roles. So I think we're going in the right direction, being supported by the provincial legislation and the discussions, quite frankly, across the board with the chief and the chief superintendent and our business units to figure out, because my sense is that there's a piece in there missing, kind of
Right.
in between, that we may be able to do some work in that space.
I think it can be a game changer, right? To release free up some resources for policing, and then actually what our citizens are asking for, a lot of these things to be covered. And I think about, we're an event city. I think it costs Blue Nose Marathon $50,000 to $60,000 for police officers for traffic control. I mean, that's a lot of money. That's no disrespect to police. That's what it costs. But so I think I'm very excited. I think a pilot is the way to go. Thank you for that.
Commissioner Hinch.
Thank you, Chair. So my first question is, firearms, when they're surrendered, is the buyback program part of that statistic?
No, not at all. Buyback program hasn't started. The firearms compensation program has not started yet.
Okay. There was another thing that came up in my head when you were talking about when people are when they're arrested and then they get released back into community or wherever they're from. A number of times they need an address. So say if they don't give a proper address, or say if they give their cousin's address, but they don't really live there, is what I'm trying to allude to. Is there any way to control that or to oversee that?
Well, technically, if they give an address that's not active, technically in breach of their actually release conditions and could be brought back into custody in terms, because basically what you're doing is you're signing an agreement saying that I will do these things so that I can be released. So pre-trial release in terms of, which is in fact going back to our conversations with Vince in terms of that the required legal standard is that to release rather than hold. Like you have to show actual cause in terms to keep someone before they can be held to go to court. So it's kept for serious offenses. So when you talk about some of the bail reform provisions, they talk about what's called reverse onus. So reverse onus speaks to, because generally what happens if you create I have to show to the judge why, if I want to keep you, I have to show why I should keep you based on the concepts of law that you should not be held in detention before you're found guilty and all these other things. Reverse onus puts the onus on you. You have to show to the judge why you should be released based on what it is. Again, held for higher serious offenses. But some of this bail reform speaks to adding more offenses to that reverse onus perspective in terms of what that is, in terms of, so you can make your submissions. But like I said earlier, Nova Scotia has always had a historically high pre-detention incarceration rate in terms which they want to. It's probably in the best. It's better to have a lower number than a higher number of people that are that are being held before they've actually been found guilty of anything. But there are some folks that we need to, because of their activities and proven against, we need to safeguard society as well in terms of not having them, some of those individuals doing repeat occurrences in community. But generally speaking, if you sign either through, because we can do police releases, which is recommended in certain things, or judge releases in terms of, I can only hold someone for 24 hours before such time I have to release them or take them before court. And then, but when you sign that document, that PTA or that recog or undertaking or whatever it is, you're agreeing to those conditions. If that condition says you're going to stay at 123 Main Street, then you should be staying at 123 Main Street.
Okay. Yeah. And if they're not staying at 123 Main Street, will they?
Well, depending on if someone, either reports it or what, it depends on the circumstances.
Okay.
Right?
All right.
Because not everyone, there's just no capacity to check on everyone that's released on conditions. Otherwise, we would do absolutely nothing else. In terms of but if it's brought to the attention that you're actually in breach of your conditions, but we've seen some pretty creative things over the time. When COVID came and some of those other things in terms of so one of the things that was because you experience homelessness, does that mean you should not be released for the same offense as someone that lives in an apartment? So so there's a lot of factors that go into play there in terms of some equity in the law.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bezic-Escalante.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for another round. I guess the message I get from all the data, however, is that overall Halifax is a safe city. And now I turn to the traffic questions, because I guess at the end of the day, because Halifax is mainly a safe city, it's actually the traffic related stuff that might affect us more day to day. So mentioned a 5% increase in motor vehicle collisions. Again, and it was prefacing with that with the caveat that this is all based on reported data, so there may be things that aren't captured here. But Chief, you mentioned that traffic tickets declined by almost 20% compared to this time last year, and you said checkpoints are back up and the traffic unit is now fully staffed. So I'm assuming that addresses why that is.
Well, there's probably numerous factors for that in terms of time of year, in terms of staffing, and those other things, in terms of when is your proactive calls, when are your traffic stops being held, in terms of as you move into the summertime, less people are at, that's when people are off. There's a lot of factors to come in that particular reason. But that's one of the things, we committed to in terms of working with, the road, the traffic, road safety folks and that sort of thing, in terms of, putting emphasis on, our traffic, our traffic enforcement. Like when I gave my remarks earlier, my chief's updates in terms, 2 or 3 of those firearms that we took off the street were in direct result of traffic enforcement, right? So traffic enforcement, beyond even just the fact of getting a ticket, which is no one likes to get, everybody wants everyone else to get a ticket, but no one wants one themselves, right? But the reality is, but traffic enforcement is beyond just that. We get into public safety issues in terms of those traffic stops were initiated because of a road safety issue, right? That led to something obviously much more serious, right?
Mhm.
So that's important. And when our people, impressing that upon people in terms like, I didn't like sitting on Quimple Road last night for 10 minutes as I was getting home from playing basketball late last night but I knew exactly what it was when I turned the corner and I saw all the lights. And the last thing I'm going to do is loop around the streets and go up the other way, because that's just asking for for an intervention, right?
Yeah.
So, but that's part of that's part of it, right? That's part of it. And in terms of, like I say, we'll continue to impress upon our folks, and not just the traffic folks, but our patrol people have a role to play in terms of road safety and traffic enforcement and tickets and that stuff as well. So it's an overall sort of, like everyone has a piece of the pie, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Makes sense. And on the same vein, I want to add positive reinforcement to your team, Chief Superintendent, and the increase in number of tickets. Like, I think, as you just said, Chief, that goes along with that commitment to safety. I had a question for you specifically, Chief Superintendent. So earlier you said this past month, 949 traffic stops with 770 tickets. So that's about 4/5 of stops leading to tickets. I'm guessing that the rest may have been warnings or something like that. Just wondering if that's kind of usual, because as you said, not everyone wants to get tickets, but I think there is still a deterrent or education value to giving the warnings regardless. So I'm just wondering how if that factors into the stats as to the outcomes. I know it's office discretion, of course.
Through the chair to the commissioner, yes, that's probably about a rough number. Generally, vehicles are getting stopped for a reason. Sometime they might be on the edge of requiring a level of seriousness where they'll get a ticket. And sometimes it's an education piece and warning and the deterrent factor. So generally, probably 4 out of 5 is a pretty reasonable sort of number.
I've got a question, if you don't mind, about calls for service. So the definition of public generated calls, is that both emergency and non-emergency combined? Okay, so those are the 911 calls and the 40, whatever the other number is. It would be nice to see that broken out. And then it goes to my next question, which is online reporting. So if you look at HRP, of those calls, online reports, that represents 6.7%, the 4,247 out of the 63,000 total calls for service, which, that's a hefty percentage. But for HRD, only 128 online reports, that only represents 0.4%. And I know you're talking about it at engagement meetings. I've heard that. Why is the number so low, and how do you think we could improve it? Because, we did just improve the 8 resources to work the center to do both emergency and non-emergency call taking. And the more we can drive, I assume, to online reporting, the less burden we place on those call takers. So I'm just wondering, what's the situation there?
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. I think there's a variety of reasons. We also have a telephone reporting unit for non-emergency calls. So that accounts for a lot. And we do at every community engagement session, we push our online reporting, and the uptake has just been not that large in most areas of the, largely rural areas specifically. So, but I completely agree. We would really like to have people do that on the front end, but the back end work still has to happen.
If I could just add to that, I actually have a meeting tomorrow morning. Tuesday, 10 o'clock, with a presentation on online reporting, because as we're looking at enhancing our online reporting in terms of adding, because what we have right now is set to a certain criteria. So I would like to get to the point where we can add more, more things. You should never be able to online report a sexual, well, actually, maybe some people would think you should actually, but in terms of, serious offenses, but as we start looking at what are some things we can add to the online reporting menu is probably a good thing.
So that's just one observation. What can we do to provide more to online reporting for non-emergency type events? And then just an observation that I had, I did see that her driving incidents were down in HRP by 16% and 9%, I think, for HRD. And I wouldn't want anybody to read into that take the foot off the gas there, because that's.
No, again, those are enforcement, like in terms of, people are out there every night doing, hopefully in terms of, what we want to see is actually the behavior change, at the end of the day. So when we're doing, the Operation Christmas and all those other things
Yeah.
in terms of, that the message get through to folks, we know it's not going to just go away,
Exactly.
but, still it's not about from a lack of enforcement piece. It's there,
Thank you, Chief, on that. Commissioner Akindoji, did you have a?
Sorry, I just want to follow up with the online reporting.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I've seen any record here on how those are dealt with or how they're cleared, the time frame that each online reporting is clear. It could be a reason for not having more online reporting because people feel that it's not addressed or not addressed promptly. So I would like to see a report on how frequently, not what frequently, what does it take to clear an online report? How long does an online report stay there before it's cleared?
I can't answer that right now in terms of.
I know because it's not indicated there, but it's a very important point because a lot of people actually go online and it takes a long time before they get an answer. Is that a deterrent for using an online reporting?
Yeah, and currently, like I said, our online reporting capabilities limit to only a certain set of call subsets right now.
So are we able to get a report back on how long it takes to clear an online reporting? We have the number of online reporting, but we do not have how long it takes to clear that.
I guess it depends on what you mean by clear.
Well, it's logged. Is it not logged?
Oh, it's logged, yes.
It's logged in.
Yeah.
How is it logged out?
It depends what the online report is.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, no, but it would be like if you're doing an online report for something that may take a while to investigate, or it could be something that.
No, I think a log out would be that the person who had put in the report had been contacted.
Oh, okay, so that's
it's as simple as that. When
perspective.
were they contacted, and then they can follow the journey or history if they have been contacted. But there's nothing to tell me that a report given in January is dealt with in April or dealt with in March.
Well, this, from the perspective of, the crime statistics piece in terms, that wasn't part of what, the analysis was. It would have to be something different, but we can look at it with our folks. And like, I'm not even familiar exactly how the system totally works in terms of, there are people that are, I'm not one of them, but in terms of, what that looks like.
Chief, I actually took it up because you said you were deploying more people there. There must be a reason why.
No, I didn't say I was deploying more people there. What I said was we were looking at a new program in terms of online reporting that would allow us to do more online reporting for different call types. Because right now it's limited. It's limited to the 5 or 6. I can't remember exactly what they all are. So we're looking at basically a new software system in terms that will allow us to better provide online reporting. So people can online report certain things tomorrow that they couldn't do yesterday. But it's not about more people. It's about automated systems.
Okay. Is it possible for us to get a report on when or how you?
I think maybe what we can do, Chair, is at some point, once we get to the point where we know exactly what we want, we come and do a presentation actually on online reporting.
I think that'd be a great idea.
Yeah.
Because, I would like to know the breakdown of the
Yeah,
percentages
exactly,
as
yeah.
well. And then, could I follow up though, Chief? Are you finished?
Well, I think that if we have a report on it, because I'm thinking that a lot of people do not go online reporting because they don't get the result. I'm not saying that not everybody, but it's for me. I think what we hear out there is you report online, you just wait forever, and I don't know if there's something we can do around that to improve that or not. If there's something to improve, yes, that's why we're here, and that's why you're here
no, fair
to
enough.
say let's look at it.
Yeah.
But we don't have a statistics now to tell people out there who are complaining that their online reporting is never dealt with promptly And that can be defined in different ways.
Yeah.
But now that we don't have the data to say how promptly it's been dealt with, it's discouraging to go online and make a report.
Thank you, Commissioner. Barring no other questions, so I think we'll close on that agenda item and we'll move to item number 11. Are there any motions? No motions that we're aware of? No added items in camera. We need to approve the minutes from the February
Yep.
23rd in camera
I'll
meeting.
test the
Oh.
commission. 13.1, in-camera motion that the in-camera, in-private minutes of February 23rd, 2026 be approved as circulated. So moved.
Thank you, thank you. All those in favor? Motion carried, unanimous. All right, moving along. Any notices of motion? Madam Clerk, did you have any notices of motion?
That would be for a commissioner if they have
Okay.
a notice of motion.
Thank you. And seeing none, the date of the next meeting is March 25th, which is at this location or at the Halifax room? It's at this location, but that will be more of a workshop design style meeting, I believe. And item number 16. May I have a motion to adjourn, please? Thank you, Vice Chair Kent.
I'd give that motion. Adjourn.
Yeah, the